Andrew Wilson and Muslim debater Daniel Hukikachu collide in Nashville, Tennessee this November 15th and 16th at DebateCon 6 on whether or not Christian or Islamic values are better for society. You don't want to miss it. Grab your tickets by clicking on this link right now so you don't miss out on this epic debate conference featuring that debate and many others. Hey everybody, tonight we're debating Christianity or secular humanism, which is better for society, and we are starting right now with Mike Jones's opening statement. Mike Jones started and continues to run the popular Christian apologetics channel Inspiring Philosophy with over 490,000 subscribers and has debated top atheist thinkers including Dr. Lawrence Krauss, Dr. Michael Shermer, and Matt Dillahunty. With that introduction, thanks for being with us, Mike. The floor is all yours for your opening statement.
All right. Can you see my slides?
And now we can. I'm just going to adjust a little bit so it's fitted.
All right. Tell me when to start.
You bet. For the audience, these opening statements are 15 minutes long. And just adapting the screen once more. We're ready for you, Mike.
All right. Thank you, James. And thank you, Dan, for agreeing to this debate. Which is better for society? I will argue the answer is clearly Christianity. But first, I want to point out I'll not be arguing that if we all became atheists tomorrow, society would collapse or that we would experience immediate moral decay. I will only be arguing that Christianity creates more optimal societies that can endure and generate progress. Again, the debate is about which is better for society. Demonstrating that Christianity is better does not mean other types of societies cannot flourish or endure. I just argue they do so in a less optimal way. Now, by Christian societies, I mean those that are based on Christian values, and the majority of the population identify as Christian regardless of governmental laws. And by secular societies, I mean those that are based on secular values, and the majority of people identify as secularists. And I want to be clear, I'm not arguing for theocracy or any type of government. Now, it's abundantly clear from multiple studies that Christianity has made the world a better place through missionary work. Christians believe that everyone should be able to read the Bible, and so when missionaries encounter cultures where the vast majority of people could not read, they developed written languages and schools to educate people. They also wanted to keep people alive, so Christians invented hospitals and advanced the study of medicine. Research demonstrates missionary activity has led to higher literacy rates, more education, better hygiene habits, medical care, economic progress, freedom, human rights, and a host of other positive benefits. And this was not only accomplished in historical white regions, but in places all around the world. Without Christianity, the world would not be as educated and advanced as it is now. See my recent series. Secularists have not gone out and done this, and there is nothing in anything we could call secular doctrine that compels them to spread their worldview and educate people in the process. Christianity has Christ commanding the Great Commission, which makes it our duty to make the world a better place. Now, one might say that secular humanist cultures are relatively new and so haven't had enough time to generate the same amount of positive change. That could be true, but research pushes back on that. Numerous studies show religiosity is associated with more charitable giving to religious and secular organizations, whereas secularism is not. When compiling the data from multiple studies, this systematic review concluded, our systematic literature review covering 77 studies reveals that religion, measured as group affiliation, values, beliefs, and the importance of faith to the believer, as well as religious service attendance and private prayer, most often positively relates with giving to outgroup and secular organizations. Another study looked at 53 nations and found that frequent churchgoers are more active in volunteer work and that a devout national context has an additional positive effect. So when a nation is religiously Christian, volunteer work is increased across the board. Religious citizens also volunteer more for secular organizations. But when nations secularize, religious individuals still volunteer at high rates, but secular individuals end up volunteering less. They even say if secularization is an ongoing process in rich post-industrial societies, we expect declining levels of volunteering due to composition and context effects. Similarly, another study found that volunteering levels were only maintained or increased if someone remains religious into their adulthood. If people become less religious, volunteering decreases. Now, it is clear secularists do give money to charities in volunteer times, but not at the level that Christians do. Christianity has been one of the greatest institutions for wealth transfer from the rich to the poor in the history of humanity. And this was accomplished throughout the world because of missionary and charity work. And as noted, numerous studies show Christianity has made the world a better place through missionary activity. One study says in a cross-national investigation of 126 countries with a total of over 179,000 respondents, religiosity was correlated with likelihood of helping a stranger. Notably, people within countries with greater religious diversity and members of minority religion were even more likely to help strangers. Additionally, an analysis of data from the World Values Survey, with a total of over 10,000 respondents from 31 countries, revealed that voluntary action in cultural, political, and social organizations was greater for those who attended religious service frequently. Now, you may think Christians may only be doing this out of obedience to God, but at least we're still doing something. The fact remains secularists are not doing the level of charity work that Christians do. And given the state of the world, a ton of charity work is still needing. So the data indicate Christianity leads to more charity work inside a nation and beyond its borders. And this in turn has led to more economic progress, medical care, freedom, etc., many other positive benefits. If nations secularize, this will decrease, which I think we all could agree is not a good thing. So on this issue, Christian societies clearly outperform secular ones. Even the sociologist Phil Zuckerman had to admit religiously involved individuals also exhibit greater manifestations of prosociality than do those who are not religiously involved. Several studies have found that religious people tend to be more charitable, more generous, and more likely to volunteer and donate blood than their secular peers are. Furthermore, a proliferation of religious devotion, faith in God, and reliance on the Bible has historically been a determining factor in establishing schools for children, creating universities, building hospitals for the sick, and homes for the homeless, taking care of orphans and the elderly, resisting oppression, establishing law and order, and developing democracy. Meta-analyses have also found that religiosity is associated with more pro-social behavior and self-control. In an ever-increasing hostile world fueled by social media, more Christianity would be extremely beneficial and aid in ways secularism can't. Related to this is the issue of suicide and depression. Research that pulls mostly from sample sizes of Christians has demonstrated that religiosity is positively associated with lower levels of depression and suicide. And these conclusions are robust considering multiple systematic reviews and meta-analyses have found them. One study from Switzerland relied on census data of 3.7 million adults and the death certificates of 5,082 suicides and found that suicide rates were the highest among those with no religion, more than double the rate of Catholics. Suicide rates have dramatically increased over the past 20 years in the U.S., and given the research tying religiosity to lower suicide rates, it should come as no surprise that this increase has occurred as religiosity has been decreasing. And unfortunately, people like my opponent have indirectly contributed to this since they've been on a crusade to eradicate Christianity from our modern public world. Religiosity is also positively associated with better mental health, as seen in this meta-analysis that compiled the data from 850 studies. So the reality is Christianity results in better mental health, lower depression, lower risk of suicide than secularism. Now, the next issue I want to focus on is the rise of nationalism and authoritarianism. With the recent rise of Christian nationalism, many people are worried about the effects Christianity may have. But you might be surprised to find out that Christian nationalism seems to be more motivating among the least churched individuals on the right. A study from 2021 found that among politically right individuals, Christian nationalism was found among those who are the least religious. They say we find no evidence that Christian nationalism mobilized church-based support in the election. And they say white nationalist groups in the United States explicitly use Christian nationalist rhetoric. But those who identify with such movements tend to not be strongly involved in mainstream Christian congregations. And similar results were found in Europe. One study found that although populist radical right parties tend to advertise themselves as defending Christian identity and values, they don't attract many Christian voters. They say these parties take pains to show that they are defenders of Christian identity and values, and yet they do not widely attract religious Christian voters. Our analyses confirm that paradox. As religiosity increases, the odds of voting for a PRR party instead of a mainstream right party decline. In earlier research, it was found that anti-religious sentiment has been found to be more distressing to individuals who do not attend regular church service. And unchurched Christian nationalists are more likely to favor an authoritarian figure using populist appeals. In fact, Christian religiosity tends to aid in making one less likely to vote for a far-right radical party. One may ask how this could be the case, but the logic isn't complicated. It's simple. When individuals on the right leave traditional Christian religiosity, they keep a lot of the symbols and cultural heritage and then reinterpret them in political ways, thereby creating political religions that have repurposed Christian symbols. Philip Gorski says, loose from its religious moorings, religious nationalism floats free of the ethical tether of Christian ethics and drifts even further in the direction of secular messianism and political authoritarianism. Roger Brubaker writes, it is precisely the ongoing erosion of Christianity as doctrine, organization, and ritual that makes it easy to invoke Christianity as a cultural and civilizational identity, characterized by punitively shared values that have little or nothing to do with religious belief and practice. We see similar results with immigration. One study looked at the acceptance of refugees at the individual, regional, and national level. It found that at the individual level, Christians, with the exception of Catholics, and the unaffiliated are relatively similar in their policy preference regarding admittance of refugees. Religious service attendance is associated with more generous policy preferences, but at the national and regional level, percent unaffiliated is associated with more restrictive preferences. Other studies found that greater religiosity was linked to things like personal altruism towards strangers and refugees. So it seems traditional Christianity works as a suppressor of political religiosity. Without it, we'll see an increase of secularization, and that tends to lead to authoritarian ideologies and the erosion of freedom and civil liberties. This should come as no surprise since other research has found that Christianity is associated with citizen empowerment, voice and accountability, democratic values, human rights, and lower levels of corruption. Humans tend to be naturally religious, even though a small minority can refrain from this. Removing Christianity from the West means man's natural religious inclinations are harnessed elsewhere. In an increasingly secularizing world, they are manifested into political religions, which often result in more authoritarianism, the erosion of rights, and civil liberties. So keeping a society Christian seems to be better. Not only will we see charity work increase, but we'll also see more freedom and less authoritarianism. Now, finally, I want to look at the most damning issue for secularism. Now, a secular culture may create high levels of well-being and life satisfaction, but it would not be good for humanity if it cannot sustain itself for multiple generations, because it would die out and possibly be replaced by a less optimal culture, like traditional Islam. So any given culture must be able to sustain itself as part of the case as to why it's good for humanity. Christianity has historically been able to do this by producing replacement populations through sustainable birth rates. And so later generations can carry on the culture and generate progress. But secularism appears to not be able to do this. To be clear, though, I'm not saying higher birth rates are necessarily better. If a society produced 10 children per woman, that might create problems in food supply chains. What I am saying, though, is that a functioning society needs to at least have a sustainable birth rate. But the countries that have secularized the most and who have the most people who have left traditional religion behind have the lowest birth rates of any nation. In fact, as secularism has been exported around the world through the internet and media, all nations' birth rates have decreased. But secular nations are now below replacement levels. Eric Kaufman notes that it is the conservatives and fundamentalists who are producing the most children because of religious tenets about being fruitful and multiplying. So he predicts in a few generations, the religious will once again take over and the secularists will be in the minority. Evolutionary biologist Michael Bloom argues that religiosity has been selected for its evolutionary advantage because it results in more offspring. Now, this study conducted a multivariable analysis looking at 58 countries and found that secularism, even in small amounts, is associated with population stagnation or even decline absent substantial immigration, whereas highly religious countries have higher fertility rates that promote population growth. Many of the modern secular nations have to rely on immigration to deal with their aging and declining populations. But that means importing people from other cultures who tend to be more religious, who go on to have more children, and in time increase in population and replace the declining secularists. Also, Eric Kaufman notes, if pious children simply assimilate into the secular mainstream, the radical effects of religious fertility quickly dissipates. So secularism doesn't seem to be something that can endure multiple generations. It has to rely on immigration from other cultures to keep its population's level sustained. But this opens it up to being taken over by harmful cultures, like traditional Islam, where rights and freedom, especially for women, will be removed. Even if it's eventually replaced by a more optimal culture like traditional Christianity, the point is still that secularism is unsustainable. It cannot produce long lasting well being or progress if it slowly diminishes and is replaced by something else. Christianity, on the other hand, is able to produce sustainable cultures that endure and has historically led to a ton of human progress, thereby making the world a better place for humanity. Secularism cannot do this, and therefore it is not as good as Christianity has been. Now, there are many other variables I could look at, but I don't have time to cover now. But in terms of charity work, pro-sociality, generating progress, levels of depression, and keeping authoritarianism at bay, Christianity clearly outperforms secularism. Secular societies also do not provide replacement populations and so cannot generate the progress if they cannot endure. Because of all these factors, Christianity is clearly better for society. Now, I want to remind the audience this is the exact same opening statement I used in my debate with Lawrence Krauss a few months ago. It's very similar to my opening statement I used with Phil Zuckerman about 11 months ago. So I have been putting out this material for a while. I hope my opponent has some good responses, because if we remember those past debates, didn't go well. So I look forward to hearing what Dan Barker has to say. I appreciate him being here, and I'll turn it over to him now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opening statement. Thank you very much for that opening statement. We are going to indeed kick it over to Dan Barker for his opening. But first, I do want to give an introduction. Dan Barker is an American atheist activist and musician who served as an evangelical Christian preacher and composer for 19 years, but left Christianity in 1984. He and his wife, Annie Laurie Gaylor, are the current co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and he is co-founder of the Clergy Project. Thank you very much for being with us here as well. Dan, the floor is all yours for your opening.
Thank you, James. This is fun, and thank you, Mike. That was very well prepared. Of course, you prepared it months ago, so and it was very well researched, and you are very articulate. And James, when you invited me to this debate, you said the topic would be what is better, Christianity or secular humanism, not necessarily secularism. And because there are many Christians who call themselves humanists as well. They embrace humanistic values. In fact, I think Mike is right. Most Christians are good people. There are jerks in every group. There's bad Christians, there's bad Muslims, there's bad atheists. But the values Mike didn't necessarily articulate them, but the values that he is implying are not necessarily exclusively Christian values. Those are human values. And I want to talk about that in just a minute. So I didn't prepare some fancy slide thing. I just want to talk as a human being to another human being, because how many listeners are going to remember all those points? I don't even remember half of them. But society is a collection of individuals, of humans. What is better for a collection of humans than human values? Humanism values reason. Humanism values compassion. It values tolerance, science, moral principles, accountability, responsibility, and it values democracy. Democracy is one of those values that you do not find in Christianity. There's no democracy in the Bible. If Christianity is anything, it is what the Bible teaches. And I think Mike agrees, the Bible is the bedrock for Christian teachings. You don't have any basic recognition of human value or human worth intrinsically in the Bible. In the Bible, humans are secondary. They are worms. Paul even called himself a slave. In the Bible, which is the basis for Christianity, the big value there is not democracy or the consent of the governed. The big value in the Bible is obedience, submission. And if you look at the teachings, especially of the Old Testament, you don't find humanistic values. You don't find good human values. What you find is God values. You should obey me. You should submit to me. You should worship me. By the way, I think any person who demands to be worshiped is not worthy of worship. Worship should be earned on its own. So I guess I would ask Mike, the humanistic values that I just referenced, compassion and reason and science and responsibility and morality and all of that, what is wrong with any of those? Those are good values. And I think most good Christians are borrowing from humanistic values when they are expressing their charity. I'm glad they are charitable. The members of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, we have 42,000 paid up members right now. An overwhelming majority of them do volunteer work. They do contribute, not because they want to get to heaven, not because they want to impress some king or master or lord, not because they're afraid of being punished in an eternal hellfire. And for none of that, it's just for the love of humanity. If you are doing good for some other reason than doing good for humanity, then that you're bringing in your own selfish motives. I want to please my Lord. I want to earn points to get to heaven. So humanistic values are good values. There are places where they are stronger in some countries than in others. But what are Christian values? And Mike did not delineate. He did not articulate what actually is Christian values. If you ask Christians themselves, poll the Christians themselves, you won't find any agreement. There's no agreement among Christian believers about the social issues. We're talking about society here. You won't find agreement on, for example, gay rights or gay marriage. You find good, devout, Bible-believing, praying, moral Christians on different sides of those issues. Women's rights, for example, birth control, abortion. There are good, church-going, devout Christians who pray, who love Jesus, who contribute to charity, who help the missionaries. They are in favor of abortion rights, and there are those who are opposed to it. Doctor-assisted suicide or in vitro fertilization, or the war, or immigration, as Mike mentioned, state-church separation, climate change, for example, or vaccines, and so on, especially gun control. Do you know what demographic has the highest percentage of gun ownership? It is evangelical Christians. For some reason, these people who follow the Prince of Peace feel like they have to be armed to the teeth. They apparently don't have enough trust in God. They need to trust in these arms. Whereas other countries that are more secular, like Denmark or the Nordic countries, gun ownership is very, very low. There are atheists who own guns, but atheists are half as likely to be gun owners as are evangelical Christians. So when you're talking about Christianity, what exactly are you talking about? Some nebulous idea of let's all just all be good people? All religions talk about love. That's no big deal. All religions talk about peace. That's nothing surprising. All religions talk about let's all get along together. And so Christians say that too, and it'd be no surprise to find a religion like Christianity that sometimes talks about love. However, if you look at the Bible, talk about love is very small in the Bible. There's not enough love in the Bible really to fill a communion cup. There's most often in the Bible is threats and curses. If you disobey me, look at the covenant that the Christians God established over his people in Deuteronomy. It starts with a bunch of blessings, but if you obey me, here's all the blessings. But then if you disobey me, then there's 4 times as many curses: pyromaniacal, pestilential, infanticidal, genocidal. The Bible is not a good moral book. Those Christians who are good people, like Mike, I'm sure Mike is a good person, are good not because of Christian teachings, not because of the Bible, but in spite of it. They have risen above the brutality of that book. So I would ask, what do you mean by Christianity? Christianity has a pessimistic view of human nature, whereas humanism has at least an optimistic view of human nature. We're not all perfect. We're not all going to be great. Some of us are going to fail. Depends where you fall on the bell curve. But I guess I'll save it for rebuttal. This thing about sustainability, because it's sort of a non sequitur. So Christianity, at its core, is anti-democratic. You won't find democracy in the Bible. Christianity endorses and embraced slavery. And in fact, the Southern slave owners in the United States quoted from the Bible. Jesus never said anything against slavery. In fact, he endorsed it by quoting it. He even said there are some slaves you should not beat as hard as other slaves. No mention anywhere in the Bible about the depravity of owning and beating another human being, the status of women in the Bible. So, and of course, if we look at Christianity, we can see the divisions and the fights and the murders and the killing, not just Christians against Muslims and others, but Christians against Christians. Some of the most brutal bloodshed in history has happened between Catholics and Protestants in Europe. So it's not a religion of peace. I am applauding those Christians who are good people, and I think so. I think it's great that, Mike, you are joining us, humanists. It is wonderful that you value human life more than the God of the Bible did, obviously. So, and even if one of us even if it turns out in this debate, one of us says, okay, this one is better than the other, secular humanism or Christianity, it doesn't mean that either of those is the best in the world. There are other cultures, there are other systems. For example, I'm a member of a Native American tribe. Native American values served very, very well on this continent for thousands of years before the Christians came over with a gun in one hand and a Bible in the other and enforced by bloodshed their views and exterminated in the name of God. All of those people in my tribe almost went extinct because of that. And who's to say that Native American values aren't maybe better if you look at Native American societies? And there's many stories of white Europeans who were raised in Native cultures who, when they were finally rescued, did not want to go back. They didn't want to go back to the Christian so-called civilized societies because, especially the women, because women had a lower status. Women in the Native American cultures were treated better. They were treated more respectfully. They had more autonomy. They had more rights. And so, yes, I think we can pick different countries around the world. If look at Japan, for example. Japan is not a religious country. It's certainly not a Christian country. But Japan, by any measure, is a secular country with good values, with a good economy, with good people. And let me get a drink of water here. When you debate, you tend to not pause enough here. Look at Japan. Look at Denmark right now. About 4% of the people believe in God. About half of them would call themselves cultural Christians. And so Japan has much less crime than the United States. And so do the Nordic countries have much less crime. The gun ownership and gun possession is really low down there. Women are treated better under secular values. So my argument is that, yes, there are good Christians in the world, but their values that they are promoting, the values that Mike actually lives by, are not Christian values. They are humanistic values. They're values that have long predated Christianity and long predated Jesus. The Golden Rule was said before Jesus said it many times, even better than Jesus said it. So I would say, since religion is divisive at its core, Christianity is divisive. It creates an in-groups and out-groups. Secular humanism is not divisive. Secular humanism isn't trying to repopulate the world as if we were some kind of like a cultic community or something. In fact, most humanists that I know would prefer not to have too many children, because then how arrogant is that? We want to have as many kids as we can so that our views can be populated. Many secular humanists have built hospitals. Many secular humanists have done charity work. I volunteer with the Red Cross, which is a secular organization. Most of the members of the Freedom from Religion Foundation are volunteers and charitable people who give to charity. And I know there are these studies that say people who go to church give more, but I think there's one advantage of church membership, and is that it gives people more of a chance to regularly meet together. And in that sense, you have a local bonding. You see it with Jewish communities. I play piano in a klezmer band sometimes, and I see the Jews get together. I see the love, the connection, the giving, the charity, I see that, how beautiful that community is. And I think you're right that most secularists don't have that kind of a weekly place where they get together, unless you're a Unitarian or you belong to one of these other, local groups. So these values that you are trumpeting, the values of literacy, for example, that's a secular value. And by the way, missionaries have also done a lot of harm. They haven't just taught, taught reading. They've also done a lot of harm. And missionaries have exterminated basically through disease. There are some good missionaries, and I used to be one, and I was a good missionary through Latin America, and I know that. But mission work, if you look at the whole picture, is more about promoting the faith than it is promoting human values. And ultimately, the Christian system itself is authoritarian. You must submit, you must obey, you must, Paul said, bring into captivity every thought unto the obedience of Christ. No freedom of thought in Christianity. In Proverbs, lean not on your own understanding. And Paul even said to Christians, there should be no disagreement among you. You should all think the same. So there's an authoritarian rigidness built into Christianity itself, which I'm glad Mike is rejecting. I'm glad he's rising above those biblical principles. I'm glad he's rising above the Christian principles. And I salute Mike, and I salute other Christians for good work that they are doing. But the good work they are doing is not Christian work. It is humanistic work.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening as well. I'm going to do a couple of quick little promotions. Folks, if you had not seen, pinned at the top of the live chat is our insider list. You can join it. It'll let you know when our next flash sale is for DebateCon 6 tickets. You don't want to miss out on this epic conference, including Mike Jones, Inspiring Philosophy. He will be there. Come out, meet your favorite debaters, as well as see them debate at DebateCon 6, as you can see at the bottom right of your screen. And click on that link pinned at the top of the chat for a discount code on your tickets. With that, we're going to jump into the open dialogue. Gentlemen, thank you very much. The floor is all yours for open discussion.
He called us gentlemen. Did you hear that?
That's great, yeah. So thank you for that, Dan. It seems your main point was a lot of the values that Christianity has been showing to be promoting and correlating with in the studies are just human values, that they don't actually come from Christianity. These are just human values. My question is, how much ancient Near Eastern scholarship or scholarship of the ancient world have you read about the values of like the ancient Romans or the Mesopotamians or the Egyptians? How much have you read on that topic?
Well, I've read something. I'm not a PhD in it, but I've read a number of books.
So I would like to quote John Bottero, and he's a French historian. He wrote a book called Religion in Ancient Mesopotamia. And you're going to find similar quotes in like Carl Vandertoorn's work, John Walton. This is nothing controversial. But he says this, he says, did morality, honest and righteous behavior have an authentic religious and cultural value, a place in the practice of religion, a direct influence on the gods? We've never found any response in all of our documentation is such a question that we ask ourselves from our own religious and biblical point of view. The ancient Mesopotamians never overtly concerned themselves with or imagined such preoccupations, which are so familiar to us. Then he says this must have been one of Moses' greatest revolutions in Israel. In other words, Dan, the reason why we have focused not on honor and shame, but our focus is on moral worth, integrity, doing right and wrong, internal guilt, this comes from the biblical worldview, which is saturated and took over the modern values. These are not human values. If you study the way a lot of the ancient cultures operated, they functioned more around honor and shame, public appearances. You could read this as well in Family Religion in Babylonia, Syria and Israel by Carl Vandertoorn. This is just so like for you to say these are just human values, that's just ahistorical. That's not actually accurate.
Well, of course, with Mesopotamia, we had the first cities. We had the first hierarchies of humanity. Cities only go back 6,000 years. And it was at that time where we started to have what we would call kings and emperors. Before that, there were local leaders, of course, but there was no concept of a great regional lord, king, emperor, master that we all must bow down to. In order to maintain that hierarchical society, then violence was introduced. And of course, slavery came into existence at that time as well. And then there was, of course, that middle class. But you find the same thing in the Old Testament. You don't find human values in the Old Testament. You find God value. You find the King, the Lord. And if you read, just read the Old Testament. Just read read the story of Phinehas. What do you think about Phinehas? That story.
Phineas, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. What do you think about that story?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, but I have no idea what that has to do with the topic. Are we talking about what is in the Bible, or if it's bad, or what are the effects of the Bible? You can sit here and you can, hold on, you can sit here and say, oh, I don't like this thing in the Bible. The topic of the debate is what are the effects that come out of the Christian worldview? And you may not like it, but historians are pretty unanimous that the reason slavery is now been abandoned in the West is because of Christianity.
No,
and
that's not true. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, it's true. You
But
can
I
read.
have-
You can read.
let- can I get-
Hold on. You can read in the historian
James, can I
named
get
Robert
back to my
Fogel.
question, James? He's getting off the.
The question has not to do with the actual debate, though.
One
Yes.
sec.
We'll let
Okay.
James decide that. He's the moderator.
Okay. What was the question?
I want to ask Micah.
I think Mike's concerned
thinks-
the question itself is not on topic though. And you're concerned that he's not on topic in answering it, but I think to go back, he's like, but wait, it's not even on the topic. That's why I think he's not on topic with what you asked.
Well, Mike brought up Mesopotamia, and I'm bringing up the ancient Israelite culture from.
But hold on. Let me clarify. I
have
brought
a-
that up
I have
because
a
to refute
question,
your
Mike.
idea. Hold on. I brought that up because you said these are just human values, and I just said, well, no, we can see clearly different values in the ancient world contrasted to the values that come out of the biblical worldview.
Exactly. Now, can I get to my
that's a
point?
difference.
Let me
Okay,
get
go
to
ahead.
the point then. The ancient Israelites were part of the ancient world, right?
Yes.
Exactly. So Phinehas, or Phineas, however you want to say it, do you think he was a good man? The Bible says he was a good man. Do you think he was?
It says that he was righteous and he followed God, I believe.
Yeah, and you know why? What he did?
Yeah, because he stopped a horrible cultic practice from engaging in.
He murdered 2 people. He took a sword into the tent. The Israelites were told, don't mix with those Midianites. That's a sin. God decreed that it was a sin for them to have miscegenation, to marry outside of the tribe, because it would be a threat to the purity of their race to mix with the Midianites. Well, there was an Israelite man who found a Midianite woman, and they got together, and Phinehas, who was the grandson of Aaron, he was so angry that they were mixing. They were basically interracial marriage. He went in with the sword and he stabbed them both and killed them both. And then he was rewarded. Moses rewarded him for doing a good thing. That murderous act was a good thing because it protected the purity of the master race of Israelites. And he was rewarded then.
Whoa. Where does it say the
Perpetual
Israelites are a master race? Where does it say that?
Well, because he was the race chosen by God. The Israelites were
Okay, wait. Why were they chosen?
God. I don't know why this God chose him.
It doesn't say anything about them being a master race. It says that they were chosen out of God's providence.
Well, it
says they're a stiff-necked people. It never says they were chosen because of some special blood.
Too far off topic because
Thank you.
Just with the topic being
you.
whether or not Christianity versus secular humanism is best for society, I do want to just redirect us.
Yeah,
Right,
and again, this has nothing to do with what the effects came out of it. Listen,
I
see this all the time.
You brought it up, and I'm not allowed to respond. I'm not allowed to respond to what you bring up.
No, let's go back to
That's not
the point you made. The point you made is all the values I'm promoting are just human values, baby. That's all they are. And I'm like, well, no, they're not. The historians have pointed out the values that we hold dear come out of the Christian tradition. This is that Tom Holland has argued in his recent book, Dominion. You can see this in the book, Christianity and Human Rights, an Introduction. You can see it in Samuel Moyne's book,
Okay,
Christian
Human Rights. Someone has to have
Rights.
the last word on this, though.
But you're skirting my point. The Christianity is based on the Bible. Christianity comes from the Bible, and the values in the Bible are what you think are the Christian values. And I'm asking you, was it good for Phinehas to be rewarded and praised for doing a good act, for killing people to stop them from interracial marriage? Was that good? You have to say yes.
No, I don't, because that's a lie. They would know. God never says, I need to stop an interracial marriage. That doesn't happen in the Torah. What are you talking about? They were engaging in a cultic practice, and it was...
All right,
they weren't. No, you're missing.
We do have to.
I guess you don't know your Bible very well.
We do
Mike.
have to. We have to go back to the topic.
All right.
I recommend you read Robert Alter on this. He covers this more extensively.
I recommend that you read the Bible, Mike, on this. Read that chapter.
That's what this is. This is the
we have to go
Tanakh.
back, gentlemen. Okay, all right.
Read the Bible, Michael, and then tell me that Phinehas was a good man. The Bible says he was good.
We have to go
Let's get
back.
back to the topic.
We have to
I
go back.
I got a question. Okay, you said, for example, Christianity is divisive and secularism isn't. But I cited a bunch
I
of
didn't say
research
that.
on this.
I did not say that.
What did you say then?
Christianity is divisive.
That's what, okay, so again, you said Christianity is divisive and you said secularism isn't.
No, I didn't
Is
say
that true?
that.
So secularism is divisive.
It can be, yes. There are
Okay.
secularists who will fight with each other as well.
Okay, so then what is the actual evidence that Christianity causes divisive? And don't be like, well, this is what I think happens. Don't do armchair science. Do you have research? Do you have evidence? Because I cited a bunch showing that it leads to more volunteering and charity work. That builds better and stronger communities when you're not actually helping people in the streets. I cited research that it leads to more citizen empowerment. Remember Roland to Salem study? It leads to more non-GO membership, voice and accountability in government. How is it divisive if it's causing these kind of good things?
Well, that's a non sequitur. Christianity is divisive.
What's the data that shows that?
Well, look at history. Look at Catholics and Protestants killing each other, right?
Okay, what's the evidence Christianity caused that? What's the evidence Christianity caused that? Because I could just say, yeah, look, as secularism leads to death, look at the USSR. And you wouldn't accept that. But why should I accept what you're saying?
Because Catholics and Protestants are based on a religion that's based on the same book, right? The Bible. They both read it. They claim to understand it. They claim to interpret it correctly. And yet, John Calvin, for example, had Servetus murdered because of a doctrinal difference. He had him burned at the stake because of a doctrinal difference. We know historically that Christianity is divisive. It builds walls. It makes inside, if nothing else, it makes Christianity a cultish circle from the rest of the world, the outsiders, the world out there. There's a divisiveness within Christianity, and humanism embraces the entire planet. Humanism embraces you Christians. There are many Christians who call themselves humanists. So it's a fact that Christianity historically is divisive.
Okay, so again, what is the evidence? I can't just say secularism causes communist states like the USSR because of the USSR. That's a bivariate means comparison. You're looking at two variables and you're making a jump to conclusion. For example, like we've seen this throughout research in the past. People thought like certain things, would lead to like this effect, and we find out that's not actually the thing. This happens in medicine all the time. We think like this nutritional aspect leads to like poor health, and then we find out, it was just a correlation, not a causation. So what you're citing here is correlative. Do you have any evidence of a positive association to suggest a causal link? Because I could cite someone like William Cavanaugh in his book, The Myth of Religious Violence, where he says we must conclude that the myth of the wars of religion is finally incredible, which is to say false. And he went through a lot of this data that you've cited between Catholics and Protestants fighting, and he made the case this was more about political disputes. For example, during the 70 Years' War, the Pope sided with France and the Protestants against the Holy Roman Emperor. Many of Charles's forces were of Protestant origin. This wasn't divided on religious lines. And he makes the case in his book, this was more about political economic factors that led to that war, not Christianity. So what is the evidence for a positive association to make a causal link?
Well, I wasn't making a causal link. I'm simply pointing out that Christianity is divisive. I wasn't making some link. If Christianity is this wonderful system of values, right, based on a Bible that's revealed by God to the world, then why is it that Christians are fighting other Christians? Why is it that even in the New Testament you find disagreements? You don't find a unitary. So it's
simple.
It's not that there's a causal connection between this and that. I understand. You can make the same argument about slavery. Was slavery motivated by the Bible or by economics? Well, the Bible supported that economic argument, and many Christian wars were supported by the Christian arguments. Sure, there were greater factors involved in that.
But you did make a positive claim. You said Christianity is divisive, and then I asked you for evidence, and you said, I'm not making a causal link. Well, yes, you are. You're saying that there's divisive things, Christianity is the cause, and I'm asking for evidence of that.
What I'm saying is that if Christianity is a viable system of values, then there should not be that divisiveness within. Christians against. Do you deny that Christians have fought against Christians? Do you deny that?
No, of course they fought. Just like atheists have fought against atheists. So what?
Well, I guess I don't see the point you're making here. Christianity is divisive. There's Baptists, there's Pentecostals, there's Catholics, there's Jehovah's Witnesses, there's Mormons, there's you name. There's thousands of different Christian denominations. They are all different. They all think they have the right one because they are blessed with the proper interpretation, just like you think you are. And yet it is divisive. They are not united. And even though Paul said there should be no division among you, and yet there is division among them. So right there, Christianity is failing. If nothing else, it is divisive.
Are all secular humanists on the same page on every issue?
No, of course not.
Okay, then there you go. Then there's the same problem on your side. What is the evidence that your side is actually going to be better for society? So far, Dan, at this point, so far, you've given no evidence whatsoever, no studies, no data, no evidence that secularism is actually better. Let me finish. No better. I've given multiple studies. All you've done is you've said like, well, there's problems in Christianity. Okay, what is the actual reason that secularism is even better? You just can't be like, well, I don't like Christianity. I think it's divisive. Therefore, my side is better. I need actual raw data because even if you can show problems with Christianity, that doesn't mean your society that you envision is better. You need to make a positive case. You've not done that here.
Yes, I have. I pointed to countries, huge societies that are much better off in almost every measure that you would look at.
What are the birth rates in those countries? What are the birth rates in those countries?
What does that have to do with how well off they are?
That has to do with everything because it shows they can't even, if they don't have sustainable birth rates, like in Denmark, in Sweden, in Spain, in Britain, they can't produce a long-lasting society because basically it's going to dissipate into nothing and be taken over by like Islam and Christianity.
It doesn't matter if it's reproducible. If it's good, it's good. Right?
Wait a minute. So let me get this straight. If you think a farm produced fruit for 1 year and then didn't produce fruit for hundreds of years after that, would it be a good farm?
If the fruit was good, it was good fruit.
So it was good for 1 year and after that it sucked, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's my point.
It was good fruit. So right now, there are countries like Japan, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, countries that are much less religious and much less Christian that are much better off than, for example, the United States with its crime rates and violence and prison populations.
What studies show that? What studies show that, and what studies shows from like religiosity?
Well, you referred to Phil Zuckerman, and you know he's got a number of good books out on showing.
I've read his books. I've debated him about 11 months ago. He was just as unprepared as you are for this and didn't have any good response to this kind of stuff I'm bringing up. So citing him, please, everyone, go watch that debate as well. Please. I promise you, it's going to be a good time. I don't know what to tell you. Citing him isn't going to really help you because I've gone through his research.
I would ask viewers to actually read his books. So
yeah. And I cited his book in my statement. Did you remember that?
Yeah, I know. And, you know, he's very gracious. He admits that there's a lot of good Christians in the world. He admits that there's a lot of good things that Christians have done. He's not like some angry, screaming atheist. I admit that there's a lot of good things that Christians have done as well. But my point here is that what they're doing does not come from the Bible. It comes from human principles. The Bible does not support any of those values that you think are so wonderful Christian values. Christians might use the Bible as an excuse to be good, but ultimately a good person is a good person because they want to be a good person. And what is their value? What is their measure? Those are human values, which means humanism. You don't find it in the Bible.
Okay, then they're not secular values either. Then by your own logic, you just can't claim they're secular values.
They're human
What is the
values.
evidence? But then if you're saying they're human values, what is the evidence that secular humanism is better than Christianity? Because in your logic, you've just pushed all these values off the table. They're neither from your side or from my side. So what is the evidence secularism is even better?
They're from both of our sides, Mike. Both of us want a world with less violence, right? You want
Of course we do.
You want a world with more understanding. You want a world with less pedophilia, with more rights, with more democracy. We both want those same things. We're both human beings. My point is that these values that you and I are both embracing, and I applaud you for it, they are not Christian values. They are human values. And our debate was, I was told the debate was about humanism, not secularism. That's what I was told, at least in the email, that we were talking about humanism. And
well, I mean, it doesn't matter because I still made the case that a lot of the values you cherish are nurtured and grow more in Christian societies. They're not growing and nurturing in secular societies. Take the countries you mentioned like Denmark and Sweden, higher levels of depression, lower levels of volunteering, unsustainable birth rates. These are societies collapsing.
forgive me for the interruption. To be fair, Dan, just to be sure we're on the same page, I'm looking at the email I sent you on Friday, September 19th, where I said Mike is interested in the topic of Christianity or secular humanism. In your response, you said that works for me. I assume this is online.
Yeah.
That so when you
Secular
say,
humanism.
hold on, let me
Yeah.
finish.
Yeah.
When you say James asked me about humanism, and I said yes, just to be clear, I said secular humanism, and you seem to agree to it. But so to not lie about me, I don't
I'm
think
not
you're
lying
lying.
about you. I
I
didn't
think you're
say
just
you
mistaken.
said it. I'm just saying that um, the word humanism was not in Mike's talk. He's talking about secularism. And there are many Christians who call themselves humanists. And I think most good Christians are humanists. So I'm focusing on the humanism as a value.
Okay, but again,
There
what is
are,
the actual evidence that, secular humanist societies will produce more optimal values that put out more what you call humanist values? Because the data I went through, meta-analysis, systematic review, studies that have looked at multiple countries say that when countries secularize, these types of values decrease. We see more polarization, as John Compton's research shows, from atheists, for example. We see lower levels of volunteering and charity work, which lowers community bonds. We see more depression, more higher suicide rates. And of course, again, collapsing societies because of low birth rates. If your society is collapsing, if secular societies are collapsing, they're not good for humanity or anything because they can't sustain themselves.
so I'm not arguing for secularism. There are secular societies that are really grossly atheistic. There have been. I'm talking about secular humanism,
Can
not
you define
secularism.
terms? Because, like, I defined my terms in the beginning of my opening statement. Maybe you should define your terms.
Well, I think I did. I defined what humanism is. Humanism is committed to these basic values of reason, compassion, tolerance, science, moral principles, accountability, responsibility, and democracy. These are values, most of these values you won't find in the Christian system. These are
Oh, yes, you will.
humanistic values.
Christianity is crucial for the development of science. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay, so
I think
when Noah,
there
so
was
when
science long before Christianity.
No. Okay. So when
Yes.
Noah J. Ephron, who again, not a Christian, when Noah J. Ephron says that generations of historians will say that Christianity was crucial for science in his chapter in the book, Galileo Goes to Jail and Other Myths, he's wrong. He's a liar. He's an historian. He's wrong. You know better than him.
Well, that's one historian, but
Okay, what about Seb Falk in Light Ages? What about James Ungariano in Of Popes and Unicorns? What about James Hannam in The Genesis of Science? I keep going on. I literally just posted a video on my channel today titled "How Christianity Created Science," and I went through study after study. You could read. I cited Toby E. Huff, "The Rise of Early Modern Science." The point of his, you might find his book kind of interesting, Dan, because he's wrestling with this idea in his book. How come modern science came out of Christian Europe and not Middle East of Islam? And he basically comes to the conclusion it was the different religions. Christianity fostered and gave rise to modern science, whereas Islam let it stagnate. It used what they called the foreign sciences as much as they could help the Islamic tradition. And when they were done, they discarded it. Meanwhile, Christianity gave us the separation of church and state. Again, that's not controversial. Historians will tell you that. And then from that, it allowed different institutions to develop, one of them being the institution of science. So, yes, Christianity was crucial for the development of science. And I could cite numerous historians on that because I just uploaded that video today.
okay, so let me agree and disagree. I think I agree with you 100% that Christians contributed to
That's
the
not what I
growth
said.
of many things.
That's not what I said.
Christians did.
That's not what I said.
Yeah, you said, I know you didn't say that. What I'm saying is that I agree that
You're not agreeing.
Christians, James,
You're not
you keep
agreeing.
interrupting here, James. I'm trying to
Let's
make
give Dan a
sense,
chance.
and he's
Go
being a
ahead.
little snarky here. You said Christianity created these things. I would say I would agree with you that Christians, many Christians, like Isaac Newton, for example, many Christians were instrumental in rising above their Bible. But it's not Christianity that did it. It was Christians that did it. Christians did it in spite of Christianity, because all of these values that you talk about, all of these things that you think are great, and so do I, they don't come from the founding document of Christianity, the Bible.
You sure about that?
They're not there. Tell me, where is democracy in the Bible? Where is it?
It's okay, well, you can just read Joshua Berman's book, Created Equal. It's throughout Deuteronomy, for example. He points out that Deuteronomy envisions,
Democracy?
let me finish. Deuteronomy envisions an egalitarian society. It's not modern democracy, but there is those elements there where the people are called to, for example, decide if they want a king, to call up to do certain aspects in terms of like electing court of people like judges, for example. So again, you can read this about in Joshua Berman's book, Created Equal. And a month or two ago, I uploaded a video titled How Christianity Created Human Rights. But you were talking about science here. You said science doesn't come from the Bible. Okay, that's just false. A lot of aspects that we have in the scientific method come from Christianity. Let me quote Noah J. Ephron again. He notes Augustine's notion of original sin, which held that Adam's fall left humans implacably damaged, was embraced by advocates of experimental natural philosophy. As they saw it, fallen humans lacked the grace to understand the workings of the world through cognition alone, requiring in their disgraced state painstaking experiment and observation. Then he goes on to say, in this way, Christian doctrine lent urgency to experiment. In other words, the idea of the fall, which was missing in like Islam, Far Eastern religions, ancient Greek thought, the idea that we are created in God's image but marred, means we have to do constant experimentation to verify results. And historians are pretty clear on this. That led urgency to the scientific method developing, because you couldn't just go on your initial thoughts. You had to do an experiment to back it up. So this idea that Christian doctrine didn't help science advance, completely ahistorical nonsense.
What doctrine?
The doctrine of the fall.
The fall?
The doctrine of the fall.
Okay, so I'm a member of a Native American tribe, and
Okay.
my ancestors were on this continent probably 15,000 years ago, which was at least 10,000 years before God gave his 10 commandments to the Israelites, or whatever you want to call it. There were cultures during that time of people loving each other, taking care of each other, learning, observing, finding herbal remedies, finding scientific. They wouldn't have used the word science, and they wouldn't have used this formal logic, but those people in those cultures, long before there were even any cities or kings or masters or lords or these big gods doing science. It wasn't formalized. It wasn't the same, but they were trial and error. They were using their brains. They were using their compassion, and they had low birth rates, obviously, because they were mostly nomadic groups, and they succeeded for thousands of years without Christianity, without Judaism. Those societies of people, and I hope you wouldn't suggest they were a bunch of ignorant, violent savages. They were viable, functioning, sustainable societies for thousands of years before Judaism or Christianity came along. And the values they were based on, even if they didn't have a formal way of saying it, those were human values. Christianity cannot take credit for the progress and the learning and the science and the observation and love and morality that our species has had many, many thousands of years before the Jews claimed the copyright to the so-called 10 Commandments. These are human values. They are not religious values. They are not Christian values.
Dan, I'm going to go back to something let me go back to something I said in my opening statement. Again, this debate is about which is better for society. Demonstrating that Christianity is better does not mean other types of societies cannot flourish and endure. I would just argue they do so in a less optimal way, end quote. That's what I said in my opening statement. So I agree other societies can continue on and flourish. They just do so in a less optimal way. Like secular societies are less optimal than Christian societies.
So I'm not saying secular societies. I'm saying secular humanist society. I think there's a lot of secular societies that are rotten, but societies that are based on humanistic principles, what even Christians will base their lives on humanistic principles. Those principles, those values are what we are all embracing. And those are the values by which I can call you a good person, not because you're aligning up with some doctrine or for some Christian teaching, but because you are respecting and you are admiring and taking care of human values, not bowing down to some Lord, Master, God who's telling you what to do, but using your brain, either formal or informal type of science. And that's what we all are. We're all human beings trying to live our lives. If you're a good person, you want to respect human values, not godly values.
And what's the evidence that secular human societies are more optimal than Christian ones? Again, don't do armchair sociology. Give me actual data that shows they're more optimal. Because I went through a ton of studies to show that Christian societies are far more optimal. So what is the evidence? Secular humanist. And by the way, when I say secular, I'm just using that as shorthand for secular humanism.
So humanism, right? So
Yeah, I'm just using secular as shorthand.
So are you saying Christians are not humanists?
Again, define humanists.
I just did twice.
Okay. In that sense, yeah, they hold the human values, and I argue this comes out of the Christian tradition. Those values you call human values, they were not as prized in the ancient world as they were in the Judeo-Christian system,
You mean
as I showed.
In the recent ancient world, not like in my ancient Indian society that long predated these kings and cities and emperors and all that in Mesopotamia and
yeah, they had different sets of values, and the values that you cherish today, the values that you hold dear, you call humanist values, are values you got from the Judeo-Christian tradition. They came out of Christianity, starting with the Torah, moving through the prophets, moving into the New Testament, and then the early church fathers. This is very easy to show when you read historians. Like, again, read the book Christianity and Human Rights, an Introduction. Read Tom Holland's book Dominion. Read Joshua Berman's book Created Equal. These ideas come out of the Christian tradition, so that you have the fortunate of saying these are human values. That wasn't so 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, but that's because of cities. I think cities were a scourge on our species. When cities came into existence, it created hierarchies. It created kings, lords, masters, emperors, to which people must bow down.
And education and hospitals and systems of learning and universities.
I wanted just to be sure that Dan got to finish that thought in case he was mid-sentence.
Sorry, go ahead.
Boy, there's so many thoughts flying around here. My brain is...
Look, I don't think cities are perfect. There's a lot of problems in cities, but there's good things that came out of cities. We would not have had like universities, for example, if Christian Europe didn't develop them and they were developed in cities. You need that kind of that manpower structure to develop more advanced institutions, to develop things like, like massive hospitals, for example. Hunter-gatherers aren't going to develop that kind of medical technology.
Are you saying then that the European Christians were superior people to my Native American ancestors before they came over here?
No, I'm saying they had a superior ideology known as Christianity.
Superior in what way? How superior?
In superior in that
didn't my ancestors have good cultures, love, family, values, learning?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you're lumping all Native American cultures into one thing, and that's absurd. Like the Iroquois did many horrible things. The Aztec did horrible things. But for example, like the what am I thinking of? Like the Massachusetts tribe up there. They were pretty good compared to what we were able to find. They actually welcomed Puritans and Pilgrims in. They got along. A lot of them converted to Christianity when they realized how beneficial it was, mind you. You can read about that in the book New England Frontier by Alden Vaughan, for example. Oh, yes. Yeah, the Mohegans. Though no. You need to read Alden Vaughan's book, New England Frontier. The Pilgrims showed up, Dan, and they actually were welcomed and they evangelized. For example, the main tribe, the tribe that Squanto came from. Most of them didn't actually convert to Christianity, and they were still able to work with the Puritans for many generations. In fact, they made it a law that they didn't have to swear on the Bible if they were going to testify in court. You can read about this in his book, New England Frontier by Alden Vaughan. The Puritans were all about religious freedom. Okay, things changed after King Philip's War when that thing happened. But for the first several decades, they lived in peace, they evangelized, and they did not force religion. Now, did that happen to some Native Americans? Absolutely. But the Puritans, no, they weren't like that.
So all these books, I mean, you're very well read, and I'm impressed with it. But I would encourage you to read a book that I don't think you're that familiar with. It's called the Bible. It's the Old Testament especially. The values that you find in that book. I mentioned Phinehas, and you agree that Moses and the God of the Bible praised him for committing this murderous act. There are many other stories just like that, genocidal stories. And it's not just Psalm 137:9, where the Bible says you should be happy to take innocent babies and dash them against the rock.
Does it say that?
Yes.
It says it says God commands that we ought to be happy when babies are smashed against rocks.
Blessed are they who take the little ones and dash them against. So that word blessed can be happy or blessed.
Who's the speaker?
Well,
Who's the speaker?
We don't know. The psalmist. The
Yeah,
Psalms.
it's coming from a psalmist, and historians and scholars have noted this is a lament. This is not God saying this. This is a lament of a guy who's been taken
But
in a
he said,
Babylonian
"Blessed,
captive. Yeah,
blessed should you be."
Satan says a lot of things in the Bible too. Doesn't mean we have to follow it.
Really? So we don't have to follow the Bible. The Bible is not God's word?
We don't have to follow it. When Satan says something in the Bible, Dan, that is, we don't make that like an actual command. When
So
a
the
human
Psalms,
says something in the Bible, that doesn't mean we have to follow it. And again, this is a lament. He saw that happen to his children in Jerusalem. So now he's lamenting.
well, you don't know who wrote it. Nobody knows who wrote it. But are you saying Satan inspired the Bible then? Parts of the Bible?
No, I'm saying that Satan speaks in the Bible, doesn't he? And so they record those conversations between like Jesus and Satan. Jesus or Satan tells Jesus, for example, to throw himself off a temple. That's not a command for Christians, obviously.
Well, do you know,
Sometimes humans say things in the Bible. Abraham does dumb stuff. He tries to give his wife away to Pharaoh. That's not a command for Christians to follow. The point of the stories of the patriarchs often is to learn from their good behavior and their bad behavior, not follow everything they do.
do you know the context of that verse?
Which one?
Psalm 137:9.
Yeah, I told you it's a lament.
But do you know the context of it?
Yes,
When
it's after the Babylonian captivity was taken. They're taken back. Yeah.
he used that word blessed, that was exhortatory. There are many other verses in the Psalms that use that word, blessed are they. And this comports perfectly with the actions and the commands of the God of the Bible himself, who also committed infanticide, who also killed innocent children because he was angry. In fact, the biggest personality trait of the God of the Bible is anger. He's always angry and wrathful, and he's punishing with fire and with genocide and with infanticide. And in my book here, God, the most unpleasant character in all fiction, I list dozens of places where the God of the Bible did commit and command infanticide. And in context, Psalm 137:9 fits perfectly with the moral values of the God of that Bible. It is not a good moral guide. And I would
And what does
encourage you
that
to-
have to do with the effects of Christianity today?
Well, I'm
versus
trying to
secular?
point out, my point is that there are many Christians who have done good things, but it's not because of Christianity. It's because of humanism. It's because they are good human people. They are better than the Bible. They're better than the book that you pretend to worship. They are smarter. They are kinder. They are more generous. They are more loving than this book. Sure, there's a few verses of love, and Jesus was a little less violent than the God of the Old Testament. But the values that you are promoting that are done by good Christians are human values, so humanistic values, and I think,
And here's a question though: all humans have these same values,
well, humanity has it. There are sick humans. There are
or
people
do
that are
all human
psychopaths.
society? Okay, but what about does all human societies have these same values that we cherish today?
Well, all the societies that you and I would call good, all of those
Oh,
societies.
interesting. So these are not human values. These are values that came out of the Christian worldview because you acknowledge there are many human societies that don't share the same values. So where do these values you hold dear come from in terms of their historical origin?
Well, do you even have to ask that question? We're human beings, right? We don't want to suffer. We want to prosper. We want to flourish. We don't like pain. We don't like deprivation. We don't like illness. There's the things that threaten us as human beings are things that we attempt to avoid. And the avoidance of that are human values because we are human beings in a natural environment. And so naturally, we want to contribute toward those things. But there are some people who are mentally ill. There are psychopaths. At least 4% of the population is psychopathic who have no empathy. And I think it's a bit of a bell curve. You probably fall way over toward the side of compassion and goodness. I'm sure you do. But others fall more over here. But in general, if we're going to measure what we think goodness is, we're not going to do it by a deity. We're going to do it by what those values are good for our species as opposed to those values that are bad for our species.
So let's go back in time. Let's go back to the ancient Roman world or the ancient Greco-Roman world. Let's just say that. Have you ever read a book called When Children Became People by O.M. Baki?
No, I haven't read that.
Okay, so let's just say we're back in the ancient Greco-Roman world, and he notes in this book, and other historians like John Martins has noted this as well, that it was a good human value to have PDF interaction with boys, that was important for them. And they would have said that's a very common human value. In fact, Bruce Ryan documents in his paper that was a very common value throughout the world, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, in the Americas even, to actually engage in that type of behavior with children until Western missionaries showed up and put an end to that kind of stuff. So could we say it's a human value to be engaging in that kind of aspect, considering it was pretty ubiquitous across human cultures outside of Christianity?
Well, ask the boys.
I don't think they would have enjoyed that, honestly. Are
No,
you
of
saying that if
course
they...
not.
Okay,
So
great.
Therefore, that is not a good human value. It was harming.
Whoa. No. I didn't say good human value. I said it was a ubiquitous human practice for the most part across cultures. So by your own logic, shouldn't we say that is a human value? Because you're trying to say all the good things that we like that came out of the Judeo-Christian worldview are actually just human values. But if we read Bruce Ryan's paper on hebephilia, he notes it was pretty ubiquitous across cultures to engage in this pederasty nonsense.
Well, that was a valuable thing for the ones engaging in it, but not to the ones who were the victims of it. It was not exactly. So
but that was a common human practice until Judeo-Christian values eradicated it. Okay, so why can you now take credit for the human value that came out of Christianity, but you're not going to take credit for the human value that was ubiquitous in all these cultures?
Well, slavery is another example, right?
Okay,
slavery was supposedly a human value in the ancient.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question, though. Like, we'll get to slavery in a minute, because I definitely want to point out how Christianity ended slavery. But for example, you're saying, well, everything I cite is good coming from the Christian worldview. You're saying those are just human values. Okay, well, let's look at what humans were actually doing before Christianity, and they were routinely engaging in pederasty. Okay, so how is that not a human value contrasted with what comes out of Christianity? Why do you get to take credit as a humanist for all the good things Christianity gave us and not these other human values?
You and I can both agree, based on the principle of harm, that some of these practices were harmful to other human beings. They were beneficial for some and harmful for others, right? There was a power imbalance involved.
You and I can agree, but they didn't agree.
No, they didn't. And that's why we are progressing.
Great. Why are we progressing?
We're progressing because we're putting more value on good humanistic values.
Why are we putting more value on the good humanistic values?
Well, not because of some mandates from a deity, because you don't find anything about that in the Bible, do you?
Yes, you do. You have the Imago Dei, for example, that all humans are created equal and in the image of God, something that was lacked in every culture before the rise of Christianity.
Every culture?
Yeah, there was no ubiquitous idea of universal human equality. In fact, even this comes into Darwin. There's a great book called Darwin's Sacred Cause. The two leading historians on Darwin wrote this great book. You'd love it. They note that his idea of this universal human descent came out of the abolitionist tracts they devoured as a family, and it went back to Adamic unity. So this idea of universal human equality, human rights, comes out of the Christian tradition, as numerous historians have noted.
Well, doesn't Christianity have a hierarchy? Aren't there priests and rabbis and leaders? There's not total equality within Christianity. And how do you know that my Native American ancestors did not have a concept of basic human rights? Maybe they didn't formulate it in the same way.
Maybe they rode magical unicorns. I don't know. We have to look at the data we have in front of us.
But you said every single human culture. How do you know?
I said for the most part. I added that caveat, for the most part, from what we can study. And you can check out Bruce Ryan's paper, Hebephilia as a Mental Disorder, where he surveys a whole bunch of the pederasty practices.
Well, how did any of my native ancestors live a good, moral, social life without Christianity? How did that happen? Without the Christian values?
Okay, once again, I'm not saying every society is completely and totally going to collapse without Christianity. That's demonstrably false, because you have Buddhist societies and Islamic societies that have existed. Okay, I'm saying Christian societies are more optimal. They got rid of harmful practices like pederasty and slavery, and they created systems of human rights. Christianity was crucial for the development of science, which has given us this beautiful technology we can use around us, and all the medical technology we have. Christianity was crucial for that. I'm not saying it was only Christianity. I'm not saying other societies cannot have good values in them, but I'm saying the most optimal form of society is a Christian one.
And how does that work? I mean, how's the structure? How can you say the most optimal form of society is a Christian one when Christianity itself is based on the Bible. How do you connect the dots? Aren't you really just borrowing humanistic values and calling them Christian because you know slavery is bad, you know that harm is bad, and you won't find any of those principles. You won't connect the dots to any Christian teacher.
Sure, Kim.
Jesus never spoke out against slavery.
Who was the first person to call for the end of slavery?
Well, who cares who the first person was and what was their reasoning?
It was Gregory of Nyssa in the 4th century, and his reason was because of the Imago Dei. Humans were made above creation. We should not be treating our fellow brothers and sisters as if they are animals, because they were made in the image of God. Therefore, they should be on a level where we are all equal. Okay? You can also, so that was the first person to do it, and he did it because of what he was reading in the Bible.
Well, that might have been a good excuse, but really, if you unpack it, it's a human value. It's not because we are all created in the image of a God. It's because we are all human beings on this planet. And there
What
were
ancient
many,
culture had that value?
and there were
Christians?
many non-religious people involved in the abolitionist movement as well.
Oh, let's talk about that. Have you read Robert Fogel's book, Without Consent or Contract?
There's people like Thomas Paine, who was a non-Christian, who was a very strong early abolitionist, who did not credit Christianity. He did not credit God. He was also in favor of women's rights and women's voting as a non-believer who wrote a book critical of the Bible, of the absurdities of the Bible. So it wasn't just Christians. There were good, solid humanistic reasons to be opposed, not because some God says you have to do it or because you think we're all. There were many people who did not believe in God who did accept the equality and universality of human beings in basic intrinsic human rights. By the way, it doesn't follow that if we were all created in the image of God that necessarily we should all be treated equally. It doesn't follow logically. In fact, if we're all treated in the image of God, it could be that we should all be slaves because God was a slave owner. God is a slave master.
No.
So
That's actually what contributed to the end of slavery. If you read 1 Corinthians 7, Paul says, because we all belong to God, you cannot become a slave to anybody else. This is what motivated the abolitionists. No one can be a slave to another human because we all belong to God as his servants and children who he loves. So because of that, that's the reason you can read like Ben Wright, John Coffey, Robert Fogel, who is an atheist, mind you, who knows it was Christianity that was crucial for ending slavery. Now, you are right that there were non-Christians that were trying to argue for the end of slavery. In fact, in the 1700s, the anti-slavery movement tried to argue from secular values. And Robert Fogel says it fails. He says adherence to the natural right doctrine embarrassed those Southern politicians who were prepared to concede that slavery was a violation of the natural rights of the enslaved. Adherence to the doctrine also embarrassed Northern politicians who, although they despised slavery, felt compelled to concede that the doctrine protected masters who would not voluntarily manumit the slaves. So they had tried in America to argue for the end of slavery from John Locke's work, from natural rights. It failed. And that's why slavery took a while to end in America. It was revitalized in about the 1820s with the Methodists and the Quakers and the Northern Baptists. And there, as Robert Fogel and Ben Wright both point out in their books, that's what ended slavery. Slavery was a sin. It was not a violation of a contract between men. It was a sin because God said it was wrong. And that's what ended slavery. And then he notes that these abolitionists, after they got rid of it in Britain first, then America, they started going around the world. They went to South America. They ended it there. They were going into Africa, and the Islamic world was finally the last to give it up in the 20th century. So yes, very much so, Christianity was motivated by principles like the Imago Dei, like Paul saying that all are equal, like the idea that you shouldn't even become a slave to another human, as he says in 1 Corinthians 7, as well as in talks about it in 1 Timothy 1. So these ideas were very crucial for motivating.
Sorry, Mike. I forgive me. I didn't realize I was muted on Zoom. I was trying to say, all right, let's kick it back over to Dan just because.
Okay, yeah.
I want to be sure it's split time, approximately.
Well, are you saying then, therefore, that universally or cosmically or whatever word you want to use, the only reason that slavery is bad is because God says so?
No. I'm saying the only reason we now live in the Western society that got rid of slavery is not the only reason, but Christianity was a major driving force in ending that.
So do you think, maybe this is off the topic and you can tell me, James, assuming that Christianity is based on the Bible, a book that I encourage you to read, Michael, in detail, that it's supposedly a science book. Did a snake speak human language? Did the sun stop in the sky? Did somebody walk on water unaided? Is demon possession the cause of mental illness?
Let me answer those four. I'll answer those four really briefly, even though it's not related. My position is that this was a rebellious seraph in Genesis 3. If you look at iconography from the ancient Near East, seraphs are depicted as winged serpents. So this would be a divine creature, basically. You mentioned like what, walking on water. Yeah, Jesus was able to do miracles. He's God. The Bible never says all mental illness is caused by demonic possession. In First Timothy, Paul even tells Timothy to drink some wine for his frequent stomach ailments. He doesn't say go see an exorcist. So nowhere does the Bible say all mental issues or all diseases are from demonic possession.
So what was that creature in the Garden of Eden?
It was some divine angelic type creature, basically.
A supernatural being, and then
Yeah, supernatural being.
So how do miracles comport with science?
They're not bound by the rules of natural laws. This is if you're going to try to bring up David Hume, I'm going to bring up John Eerdman's book.
Well, there was some kind of a creature in the garden, some physical creature.
Yep.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's complicated. That's what I would say. There's a lot of scholarly literature on this.
Why don't we just say it was a myth? It didn't really happen.
Okay, that doesn't change whether or not Christianity is better for society than secularism.
Yeah, but it does throw some question on the idea of the scientific reliability of the book that you say is the basis for all of science. And those are just four brief examples. Talking donkey, a talking dragon with 7 heads, and you know,
have you heard of the paper?
Fertility, the fertility of cows by staring at a striped pole. There's so much non-science, so much bad science in the Bible. You want to interpret it metaphorically or allegorically or somehow, but I hope you will join me in agreeing that much of that is metaphorical and is not literal.
Have you heard of the paper, The Coexistence of Natural and Supernatural Explanations Across Cultures and Development, where they note that believing in the supernatural does not inhibit naturalistic explanations in most people. In other words, you can be a Christian or a Muslim and believe in the supernatural without that somehow inhibiting science, because you can have scientific or naturalistic explanations alongside like supernatural ones. So this is all irrelevant because this doesn't actually show anything.
I agree with it, but if the Bible is the basic, it's your book. Christianity, if Christianity is anything, it's the Bible. And we can't escape what the Bible says. And the Bible is vulnerable to a lot of criticism. You have to agree. And even Bible believers don't agree on all of that, even though they're supposed to agree on it. It's a very, primarily, as a book, it is primarily unscientific. And there's some history in it, but there's also a lot of unhistorical things. There's also a lot of immoral teachings in the Bible, teachings that you and I would be aghast at, that we should rip those pages out of the book. And if Christianity is anything, it's that book, and that book alone. In fact, I list more than 1,500 passages in here showing what an absolute monster this deity is in the Bible that I used to worship, and that I think you still worship, and you still admire this being. I don't know why. I think I do know why. I think because you're better than him, you're smarter, you're more humanistic than the teachings that are in this book.
No, I'm not better than God. I've not been able to die for the sins of humanity yet. And probably will never, because I'm not as good as Jesus is. But again, this is all irrelevant. Well, you can say that, but it's a lie. But this is irrelevant to the topic. You can attack the Bible, but here's the problem, what you're getting at. You're saying you look at these verses and you think they're bad. And they're going to, but that doesn't mean they're going to lead to bad effects. This is armchair science. We need to look at what the actual effects are of Christianity in the field of sociology. Because I could sit here all day and be like, well, I think, secular humanism is going to lead to, I don't know, persecuting religious people. You would be the first person, Dan, to tell me, what's your evidence for that? I'm going to say the same thing to you. You may not like something in the Bible. I'm going to be like, what's your evidence that leads to negative effects? Because the data doesn't show it.
Well, you didn't ask a question, but
Well, you can respond. Would you agree that it would be absurd for me to say I think secular humanism leads to the persecution of religious people because I just decided so. I saw something I like. Like Dan Barker goes around saying that religion's bad for society. You know what he's going to do one day? He's going to get power. And then he's going to start taking children away from parents because he doesn't want them raised being taught these horrible, what he thinks are these horrible ideologies. That's what he's going to do. Wouldn't you be the first person to say, there is no way that's going to happen? You need to show evidence that my secular humanism would lead to this authoritarian measure. Wouldn't you be the first to say that?
I agree with you.
Great.
I'm not disagreeing with you that Christians have done good things. I'm applauding that, and I've repeatedly said that. What I'm saying is the reason for it is not Christianity. The reason for it is humanism. Yes, there are many, Isaac Newton was a Christian, and look at the great things he did for science, right? He had some wacky Christian views. I think you know about that. But he was a Christian, but he was able to separate his religion from his scientific work and do some excellent work. And so I think he was a good Christian in that sense. And I think you're probably a good Christian. But when I say good, I mean the measure of the good is humanism. And that was our debate tonight, was humanism.
So let's go back to your point then. You say there's bad things in the Bible. With my analogy, you agreed with me. It'd be wrong for me to say from the armchair, secular humanism is going to lead to authoritarian measures and persecution of religious people. How can you then say that, well, I learned this thing in the Bible, I didn't like it, it's now going to lead to these bad effects that are against human values? What is the evidence for that, beyond just doing armchair science?
Well, history. Look at the history of, for example, the Christian church. Look at how there's an old saying, and this is not totally true, but it's a good saying. There was a time when religion ruled the world, and we call it the Dark Ages.
Oh, for the love of God, the Dark Ages didn't exist. That's a myth. That's another myth.
I know that. I just told you that is a bit of a stretch to say that. But
fair point.
The point is the church did pretty much rule the world, and look at the persecution that came from it. Look at how the Catholic Church controlled, or look at their, the Inquisitions and the intolerance and the treatment of women and of witch, because there's a verse in the Bible that says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live."
No, it says that necromancer. That's a necromancer.
Whatever the word is, you shall not suffer that person to live, whatever you want to call it.
So how many witch burnings happened before the year 1000?
There were very few witch burnings, actually.
How many witch persecutions happened before the year 1000?
There were thousands of, before when?
Before the year 1000.
I don't know how many. I don't know that history.
Very few. Let's go to the Lombard Code of 643 AD. They say, "Let nobody presume to kill a foreign serving maid or female servant as a witch, for it is not possible, nor ought to be believed by a Christian mind." The councils of Elvira, for example, and Trullo, for example, they merely imposed penances for those who confessed to being devil worshippers. They were not going after this. Now, Nathan Johnstone, he is an atheist like you. He wrote a book called The New Atheism. You know why? Because he thought a lot of the ideas coming out of New Atheism were pretty bad. He's an historian. Here's what he says about the rise of the Inquisition, the witch trials that happens in the second millennium. He says, between the end of the Roman Empire and the late 12th century, torture had fallen into disuse in Europe. Sam Harris might be surprised to learn that Christendom owed its reintroduction not to bloodthirsty clerics, but to scientific jurists concerned to free justice from its reliance on God's intervention and to champion human judicial competence. In both medieval Europe and modern-day America, then, societies that had abandoned torture contemplated its reintroduction as a rational necessity. But the medieval story, the one for which we know the ending, recounts the failure of rationalism to control its offspring. So this is why I talked about earlier, you finding actual, connections here. If you read the historians, they'll say this comes out of rationalism.
I think you just proved my point, Mike. That Christians have risen above the Bible. Christians are better than the Bible. The Bible says you should not suffer a witch or whatever to live. Their blood shall be upon them. They should be killed, as people were routinely killed and massacred, even innocent people in the Bible. So those later Christians were smarter than their Bible. They were kinder than their Bible. They rose above biblical Christian principles to embrace what you and I should be calling humanistic principles, because human value is how we determine if something is really good or bad.
We do have to jump into the closings. This is a good chance to transition. I will set the timer for. Uh, you guys good with? We had talked about beforehand 5 minutes. We just went slightly over for the open dialogue. Are you guys? Can you squeeze it into 4 minutes?
I can do 4.
Okay.
Well, I didn't prepare an actual closing, so we should just talk for a few more minutes. Is that it?
You're going to do
Well,
closing statements.
I
Okay.
meant is if you guys each have 4 minutes, and we'll start with Mike, and then Daniel have the last word. So
Mhm.
timer is set, and 4 minutes, Mike.
Just on that witch thing, one more thing. That's in the Old Testament. Christians are under the New Covenant. There's nothing about that. That's why these medieval Christians were very much open to not doing that kind of stuff until it was reintroduced by rationalism, as Nathan Johnstone notes. Nathan Johnstone. Now, as for the entire debate, let me reiterate my opening statements. We're talking about which is more optimal for societies. I've done a lot of research on this because I've been told by secularists and new atheists for years, you're harming society, you're making it worse. I said, fine, bet. And I did all the research and she found out that's absurd nonsense. You can look into the historical research, the sociological research. Christianity is far better. And without it, Western societies will collapse because of declining birth rates. Secular humanism, that is, if we're going to do there, is unsustainable. It cannot produce lasting societies because it cannot produce replacement populations through sustainable birth rates. Therefore, it's bad for humanity and society if it cannot even produce societies that last for more than 1 or 2 generations. But I want to remind everyone this, is that for years we've heard from new atheists like my opponent that religion is harmful, needs to go away, it's a relic of the past. We now know that's false. Christianity is essential for progress, for building better societies, for creating better communities, lower levels of depression. We have a meaning crisis right now because the new atheist movement has destroyed Western civilization, telling a lie to us that they're going to make the world a better place by getting rid of religion. And now we know that's nonsense. So if you're spreading secular humanism, the sad truth is you're making the world a worse place. Sorry if that offends you, but that's just the fact, and the data bears that out. We need a strong religious foundation. Secularism cannot replace it. Christianity needs to be the foundation of the West. It's what gives us our values. Our values don't just come from just humans being humans. Our values come from the Judeo-Christian tradition. The ancient world was built around honor and shame. It was built around this idea that there was a definite, defined, inherent hierarchy, which Christianity obliterated. Hierarchies now are based more on role, not on inherent value. In the ancient world, no, the kings had more inherent value, the nobility had more inherent value, and then the Christian tradition obliterated that. This hierarchy still exists today, but it's a hierarchy based in role, in systems, not on inherent value. In Christianity, we have a uniquely inherent value that spans across all humans. That's what Christianity gave the world. These other human societies did not because they did not have it. So what my opponent calls human values, he needs to read Tom Holland's book. And by the way, Tom Holland is an atheist. He wrote Dominion. What he's calling human values came out of Christianity. He's just lucky enough to live in an age where he can think they're just human values and not realize where they came from. It all goes back to what Christianity gave the world. And we just can't cherry pick the Bible. We got to actually go through and read the cultural context of things. A lot of the verses he cited are not the marching orders for Christians because Christians are under the new covenant. And under the new covenant, we have very specific values which were for all humanity. I'm not an ancient Israelite who's bound by the borders of Canaan. So a lot of the stuff he's bringing up in the Torah is irrelevant for this point because we are under the new covenant. And of course, we see that Christianity did many great things. It ended slavery. It gave value to children. It gave us human rights. It was crucial for the development of science. Christians have been crucial for developing hundreds of written languages so people could read around the world because they were obsessed with getting people to read the Bible. That didn't come from other cultures. These are uniquely Christian ideas that were able to actually flourish, unlike other ideologies and other values. So what makes the world a better place? It's Christianity. What creates the most optimal societies? Christianity. And I've yet to see any evidence from my opponent in this debate as to why secular societies, secular humanist societies, are more optimal. We need Christianity. Christian societies are more optimal. Thank you.
Time. We'll kick it over to Dan for his closing as well. I have the timer set for you, Dan. 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mike. So I think you kind of just proved my point, the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now you were saying at least parts of the Old Testament Christians should ignore and can ignore and have ignored to their credit. They've risen above that book, which is a book about the very God that they today claim to worship, that very God that Jesus in the New Testament said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I and the Father are one. He quoted that Old Testament God with approval on many occasions. So he was not throwing out the Old Testament God. He was endorsing every jot and tittle of that old law. And yet you, to your credit, Mike, I applaud you, you seem to be saying, let's throw out some of that ancient, primitive, harmful teaching that was in the Old Testament. And I'm saying that's what humanists are doing with even the New Testament. All of these teachings are irrelevant to human value and to human societies. Yes, and I'll repeat it, many Christians are good people and have done good things, and many of them have done it thinking they are doing it, crediting it to their religion. But it's not because of Christianity. You have not connected any dots between actual Christianity to these modern humanistic values that most modern Christians like you and James are embracing in spite of the teachings of the Bible. So what I'm saying, our debate tonight is about humanism and human values. And of course, you won't find what we would call normal representative democracy in the Bible anywhere. And you won't find any denunciation of owning other human beings on this earth, at least. I know in Galatians it says, in heaven there's neither slave nor free, but that only applies to baptized Christians. So I would like to hope that in spite of our differences, in spite of the intensity of our debate here, and you are very intense, Mike, and you're very well read, and I understand that. You're very evangelical about it, I guess, and I mean that as a compliment. In spite of that, I think we can embrace our shared humanity and the good things that Christians have done in history that you credit to are done. My point in this whole debate is they're done not because of Christianity, the teachings in the Bible. They're done because Christians have risen above Christianity, and they're still Christians, of course, and they like to get together and love God and worship and do all those things, but they're doing it because of human values. Society has progressed, obviously, and it's a good thing that society has progressed, and it happens in tandem with the existence of current religions in time. The fact that it happened in tandem in scientific revolution and moral revolutions in tandem with Christianity does not mean Christianity is the cause of it. It might mean that many Christians can take credit for some of that progress, but it's not because of Christianity for society. The good things that have come in society, and by good we mean good for humans, are based on principles of humanism, of compassion, of science, and of reasoning. And most humanists would say, we wouldn't use imago Dei, we wouldn't say that, but we would say we are all part of the same species, we're all part of the same family, we are all one huge global species, one human family, and that gives us all equal human worth. And when you consider that, the good things that have happened in society, whatever they are credited not to Christianity. Society would be much better doing those very same things without Christianity.
Thank you very much for that closing as well. Folks, we're going to jump into the Q&A. As I load the questions here, I want to let you know we want sincere, substantive questions, not insults. Some of these questions will be in the form of the comment because if they're a super chat, we allow that, and I just try to put it in the form of a question, but you get the idea. And if you have not noticed, folks, DebateCon 6, linked in the description box. Grab your tickets. You don't want to miss out. This conference is going to be huge. With that, jumping into these questions, thank you very much. This one, appreciate it. Kobe McQueen, I appreciate it, your super chat, but I was really confused by what you meant. They said, I'm going to give it a shot, but said they didn't say who this is for. They say you don't follow the argument or give credence to the utterances of your opposition, have nothing to offer but absurdity. So it doesn't really say who that's for.
That's not a question, though. That's not even a question.
Right.
I agree with Dan, yeah.
Some of them won't be in the form of a question. When people put in a super chat, we let them have more flexibility with like raising an objection, but That one just confused me. This one coming
Quick,
in
I just want
from
to say thank you, Dan, for the debate. I appreciate it. I think you're a good guy too. I don't want to avoid that. And by the way, anyone watching, I'm going to do a debate review on my channel immediately after this.
Even Lord asks Mike, what is inherently wrong with authoritarianism and far right wing ideology? I think they're saying like, why is it bad? Like, it's sometimes it's just claimed, but they're saying, but is it actually bad?
I mean, if you're a red-blooded American like I am, and you enjoy freedom of speech, freedom of expression, yeah, it can be bad. And again, I remember Milton Friedman saying, "Where are you going to get these angels that are going to run society? Humans, as Immanuel Kant said, out of the crooked timber of humanity, nothing straight has ever grown." So I'm a big fan of Thomas Sowell and his philosophy, his political philosophy. I don't think any type of authoritarian government is going to be good until kingdom come. So you may think it's going to be good because you're going to enforce your values, but it can easily be turned around against you. So I think the best optimal forms of political structures would be stuff like what we have in terms of like a nice, constitutional republic, for example. And Toby Huff notes that these were being developed throughout Christian Europe in his book, The Rise of Early Modern Science. So I think these are very in line with the way Christianity has functioned and developed.
I'm
This one
glad we
from
agree about that.
Yeah.
I'm glad. We often march. There's often Christians and atheists and agnostics marching in the same marches, protesting kingships and authorities. However, not to sound like a broken record, but the Old Testament at least was quite authoritarian.
We'll go with this one from Even Lord says, Dan Barker, since you value science, could you please tell us the scientific method? Then they have a second question. I'll let you go at that first one, Dan.
Well, there have been dozens of people trying to formulate what is the scientific method. But basically, it's observation and creativity and forming hypotheses, which, if they are confirmed by testing, turn into theories, and theories can be overturned. But I would say at its basic, the scientific method is observation, looking, taking account. That's what Darwin did. He spent decades before he even wrote down his. He just looked, he saw, he observed. So, and then of course, is it falsifiable? Is it repeatable? Is it testable? Is it empirical? Those kinds of things. And people give different definitions of the scientific method. I don't think there is the scientific method in my reading anyway. But we all do science. Every child is doing science, looking around. What is this? How do I learn from this? And so it's just, science is just kind of organized curiosity, I think.
This one coming in from JSS Tiger says, secularism is the middle ground when you're in a country with freedom of religion. It allows Christians and Muslims to get along. So again, some of these are comments.
Yeah, I can comment on that. What do you mean by secularism? Because there's a concept of the secular in the Christian tradition that Augustine develops in his book City of God. The separation of church and state, as I noted, comes out of the Christian tradition. It's developed, it comes from Jesus saying, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render unto God the things that are God. It's developed by Augustine that is, and then it really comes to its fruition in the Protestant Reformation. Read the last article of the Augsburg Confession. I think you would really like that. It's very much this idea. So what do you mean by secular? The idea that we have a secular is very much something that comes out of the Christian tradition. I think secularists go too far with it, but I think you've like, for example, like traditional Islam in other societies that don't have that. I think Christianity is going to be a good middle ground in how that is developed and used in a society.
So you're calling the middle ground Christian, and I would call it secular.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'm saying it depends on how you define secularism, is what I mean.
This one from Solar PvP says, Dan, are you aware of the Milgram experiment? Do you not think that experiment warrants Christianity's pessimistic views of human nature? I can give a refresher if you're not familiar with that study.
Yeah, remind me, but I remember
Yeah,
reading.
it's like the famous Milgram shock experiment.
Oh yeah. I forgot his name. Yeah, where people were following orders.
Yep.
They were doing because they were following orders. Yeah, I think that's one of the flaws in our human nature. I mean, our human nature is not perfect. We evolved optimally, but not perfectly. So there's a lot of problems we have. And I think the tendency among many of us, not all of us, to just follow orders and fit in is very dangerous, in which I think underscores the value of freedom of thought and freedom of expression, to be able to dissent from maybe what the majority or from what the authority even tells you.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Even Lord says, but Dan, what about the verse, sell your cloak and buy a sword in Luke 22:36? I think it came in when you had said, like, why are all these Christians buying guns? Like, don't they have faith in God to protect them?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Yeah, that does show that that Jesus was not a complete, what we would call complete pacifist. He believed in weaponry of the day. And there are Christians who debate that. In fact, we just interviewed William J. Cole, who has this brand new book that's just coming out next week. It's called In Guns We Trust. He's a devout Christian, and he's arguing it from a Christian position. He's ashamed at how, at least in this country, the evangelicals are married to their guns. And I'm not going to solve that debate right here, but Christians don't agree with each other on that. And he thinks if you have to trust in guns, you're not trusting in God.
You
Really?
got it.
Really? Okay.
This one from Roken says, Dan, this debate is not about the Bible. It's whether or not it's good or evil. Instead, it's about who contributes to better society, right?
It is about the Bible. What is Christianity? If you're going to connect the dots and you're going to say Christianity is better, then well, what is Christianity? So it has to be about the Bible.
This one from
We
Even
talked-
Lord says, Dan, could you define what a woman is?
Well, I don't think I could give a scientific definition. I think most people would say a woman has a vagina and a uterus.
Well
What
said.
does that have to do? What does that have to do with anything?
He's assuming you can't, because there's people that go around saying that a woman is whatever a woman wants to be. But I appreciate what you said. A woman is a biological female.
Roken says, Dan, this debate is, we got that one. Even Lord says, Japan and the Nordic nations are majority racially homogeneous. Should that be prioritized in society? I think they're saying, like, when we talk about the atheistic countries, many of these are also, like, in Japan's case, all Japanese, not all, but almost all Japanese people, or the Nordic nations, almost all Nordic people. I think they're saying, by that reasoning, should we say that homogeneous society, like all whites or all Japanese people, is like better for society?
Well, I don't know if that's the topic of the debate. I mean, he's making an analogy, you mean? We could find,
Yeah, I think they're trying.
I mean,
the
all
point
African,
is that we can't just look at, like, do this by very means comparison. You can say there's a lot of atheists in Japan, and they have, like, good benefits there. Therefore, that's comparable. Because you could do the same thing with, like, homogenous races and say, well, that's the thing. In fact, racists like Amy Wax have done that. They said the reason Europe is so good is not because of secularism; it's because of their white skin. And she's a horrible human being, of course. But that's the danger of doing a by very means comparison when you look at nations and positive effects.
I think very quickly, there's one interesting thing we can say about Japan is that under Hirohito, they did have a religious government. Hirohito was the god. He was the sun god, and they were all raised to obey him and give their lives for him. And look at the atrocities committed under that religious government. I'm not comparing that with Christianity, but I'm just saying that once they got rid of that religious authoritarianism, and basically it was the bomb that did it. I'm not going to argue that issue right now. But once they got rid of the religion and started running their country in a purely secular way, non-Christian secular way, the society has vastly improved.
Got it.
I would also want to just say that
I
Japan is not mostly
rebuttals.
atheist. They're Shinto and Buddhist mostly. Just want to point that out.
Lefty Dawa Troll says, has secularism improved the UK?
I would say no.
Dan, my guess is you'd say yes.
Well, I guess you would have to ask on by what measure? What measure are you talking about?
I would say in
UK
terms
has
of like
better
things like
health care.
authoritarianism. No, I would say in terms of like authoritarianism, lack of freedom of speech, a lot of freedom of rights have been eroded now. I mean, they just banned people owning ninja swords. It's become like a authoritarian nightmare in terms of what they're
maybe
doing, and this
maybe
real
like
ID stuff they're coming out is also pretty bad.
overall like net good for a society that's flourishing. Maybe they would say what's the average, Dan, for your opinion?
I think so. I think on balance, I think the UK is doing. I mean, they're having some serious problems right now, and immigration is part of their struggles they're having.
Hmm.
But on
Yeah, their birth
balance, I
rates are
would
collapsing.
say I would. I have mixed feelings about the UK, but yeah, I think on balance, I think yes.
You got it. This one from the Lamb Apologetics says, Dan, you've made moral claims about Greeks being better moral peoples than Christ himself. Could you give the arguments as to why?
About Greeks, I didn't say
Yup.
Greeks, did I?
Maybe he's referring to something in the past you've said. I don't know.
No, I don't. I didn't say anything about Greeks.
Thinks you're a Greek supremacist. But Sassy Dan says, this is a different Sassy Dan. They say Japan had
Yeah.
generations of civil war and had almost every prime minister assassinated up until its civilization was taken over by the West after World War II. I don't,
And
I think they're trying to say like Japan is actually not that great, morally speaking.
they do have a functioning society. Yeah, I guess they have problems. I've only been
Just
to Japan once, so I'm no expert on it.
No, by the way, I just want to say with people, this is a spray bottle I've been flipping. It's much better, and maybe Hassan Piker should get one when your animals start acting up, so you don't actually harm them. Just want to throw that out there. What I was playing with all the whole time, because my cat started fighting when Dan was doing his opening statement.
So if we did a public debate, you wouldn't squirt me with it, Mike?
I might. I don't know.
Paulos, Christian apologetic, says doing good things for, quote, other reasons, such as heaven or God, means you're rational. Having non circular foundations for your morals is noble, not, quote unquote, disingenuous, though, right, Dan?
Boy, I don't follow that at all. Say that again.
I think they were saying, like, doing good things for other reasons rather than good in and of itself, such as if you say, like, well, hey, I want to do it to please God. I think he's saying that's just rational. Like, you have a reason. Like, if someone asks for why you're doing something, you actually have a reason for why you're doing it. And
Well, okay, I get it. Well, yeah, you might have a reason, but it may not be a good reason. I mean, look at the Nuremberg defense. The things that the Nazis did, they had a good reason for it. They could give you a rational to protect their own skins or to follow their Fuhrer or whatever. That doesn't mean it was a good moral reason.
you got it. This one from, appreciate it. The Lamb Apologetics also asked that, Dan, the topic is about things that come from Christianity versus secular humanism. Why are you claiming that talking about ending slavery is off topic?
Did I claim that entering slavery is off topic? I don't
I
think
don't
I did.
remember.
I think it's right on topic.
Oh, it might have been, they must have misunderstood.
Well, we both agreed that there were believers and non-believers involved in abolition. And some of them credited God, and others of them just credited what we would call humanistic principles. It's not good to own and torture another human being for that reason alone, not because some God tells you that it's bad.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Evan, thanks for your kind words. Bubblegum says, it is a fact that Christianity has been detrimental to, let's see, the white Anglo-Saxon nations. Christianity teaches multiculturalism and evolution as core ideas. I don't know, he might be on some kind of drugs. GS, that's Tiger. I don't know what that meant.
Hey,
They,
listen. I'm Christianity is not a white supremacist religion. I appreciate him saying that. It definitely is not. We believe that all races are equally the image of God, and we celebrate that, and that's going to be the future. Not this white Anglo-Saxon supremacist nonsense.
Yeah, I used to sing, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. So I was like that. I was really surprised at how a lot of right-wing American conservative Christians have really twisted what I thought was a more pure version of Christianity.
You got it. This one from Apollos says for Dan, so a worldview should be judged based on only correlations. This same logic is used to show science in secular institutions is racist or sexist.
I've never said a worldview should be based on correlations. I never said that. If by worldview you mean morality, if that's what he means, if that's true, then I would say the value is based on harm, avoiding harm to our biological organisms that we are. That's the basis of morality. But maybe I'm misunderstanding what he means by worldview.
You got it. This from JSS Tiger says no society should be run on faith over fact, dogma. Religion is beliefs and cares nothing for truth, Mike.
All right, well, just go read all the books and studies I cited.
Nazar says humanism values its own extinction. How is the replacement rate in Japan? Oh, this is interesting. I know, Dan, earlier you mentioned, I can't, you probably touched on it during the debate, but in terms of like Mike saying, hey, Christianity seems to lead to like more babies. And Dan, I think you said, this is what I think this person is asking about. I want to hear your thoughts, Dan, on this question.
Well, I touched briefly replying to Mike about the idea of sustainability. Why assume that sustainability is a good thing? Unless by society you mean if you want that society to continue, then it needs to breed. Well, we could say the same thing about a virus or a bacteria. We could say it's sustainable and it's reproduced. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. The fact that it is sustainable just means that it can last. And therefore, society lasts.
Are you saying humanity is like a virus that, I mean, like there's a big difference between a virus lasting and humanity. I mean, if the debate is, what is going to be good for human society, I think we need an ideology that would basically allow human societies to continue on. If secularism can't do that, then you're kind of agreeing it's not good for human societies.
But there are many different kinds of societies. There are good ones and there are bad ones. So would you judge a bad society that is more sustainable to be better than another society that is less sustainable but is actually more moral? Which one is better? Is the sustainability what makes it better, or is it the inherent moral value what makes it better?
I said in my opening statement, it's not the amount of sustainability. It's they need, that's a threshold. You need to at least be sustainable. So in your example, the one that's less sustainable is going to be better because it still is sustainable. It's just not as sustainable. So I compare, like, for example, birth rates among Muslims and Christians. Muslims have higher birth rates, but their societies are far worse than Christian societies, even though our birth rates are slightly smaller. So I would still prefer Christian societies because of other factors, but both are sustainable because of birth rates. Secularism can't even get in that because it can't produce sustainable birth rates.
So if Islam is more sustainable than Christianity, does that make it a better society?
I literally just said no. Like, I just explained that all to you.
Well, then what's the point of sustainability?
You need it. You need it to even be. It's a threshold. You need to at least be over that threshold. After that, it's irrelevant. But you still need to get to that threshold.
This
it doesn't mean it was bad. Even if it fails the threshold, doesn't mean it was bad.
I have to go to the next one. Juan Santiago says, for Dan, what are human values? In Christianity, everyone is capable of good because everyone is made in the image of God, right? Let me just quick get my cord to plug in. I'll give you a chance to answer that, Dan.
Well, humanism says everybody's capable of good as well, capable of it, and nurtures that and champions that. And if it's just because of God, then actually there's no intrinsic moral value within the species itself. It comes from outside somewhere. And what humanism says is that we are intrinsically valuable because of who we are as human beings. And if we choose to be moral, and by the way, I don't think there is such a thing as a moral ought. It's not a thing. I think a moral ought is just the second half of a conditional statement. If you want to be a good person, then you ought to act in ways that minimize harm. That's a good, perfectly functional, naturalistic moral philosophy that I think most of us intrinsically follow because we know that we avoid harm. We don't like harm. We don't, by nature, all of us are trying to minimize the amount of harm. And that is an actual, natural, measurable, scientifically measurable consequence of actions, whereas pleasing a deity is not measurable. It's not
I
scientific.
reject that. I reject that form of ethics. I'm a virtue ethicist. It's about maximizing virtue. If harm, like for example, like working out or developing patience may cause mental harm at first, but it maximizes virtue. That's a good thing. So harm principles are useful, but most of all, it should be subordinate to virtue of all
What's
things.
virtue?
So love, joy, patience, peace, kindness, self control.
But humanists embrace all of that as well. I wouldn't necessarily call it a virtue. I
I'm
would
just
call it human.
clarifying. I think that virtue is primary. Harm. We should not. The primary form of ethics should not be reducing harm. It should be promoting virtue and decreasing vice. And then
I
harm
disagree.
and pleasure
I
are
disagree. I
secondary.
No, I
Well,
disagree.
well,
It's the
you
other
said
way
this is a
around.
net. Well, that you said this is a naturally human thing, but here I'm giving you an entire field of normative ethics called virtue ethics, which disagrees with you. So when you're having this utilitarian outlook, you're not actually expressing human values. You're expressing your specific type of values you get from a tradition in moral philosophy, and that's not ubiquitous across humans, let alone even in the West.
Well, what I'm saying is, as long as there do exist viable naturalistic moral philosophies, then there is no need to go to the supernatural to get your moral basis.
This
Maybe
one
you
from
disagree with mine, but at least we secular humanists and naturalists can present a viable moral philosophy.
this one from Basil Problem says, "Is psychology a science? Is it reproducible?"
The experiments have to be reproducible.
This one from Than Christopoulos says, "For Dan, it seems like you're conflating the source, quote unquote, of these values with the question, what group cohesion system best implements these values? Christianity or secular humanism?" Uh, this is, I don't know, you kind of responded to this many times, but if you want to, you can definitely respond again.
Well, I guess to say it very shortly again, that these good Christians are good Christians because of good humanistic values, not because of Christianity. And if Christians want to if good Christians want to gather together and do good things, I'm all for that. I might even join their parades and their marches and their whatever and contribute to their charities. But what they are doing are not Christian things, they are humanistic things.
You got it. And this one from Do Appreciate It. Colby McQueen tried to clarify. They said, and this is still a little bit, they said, but Dan, do you think it's the case that you gave no credence to what it means to be a moral person and what it means to allow a symbiotic relationship between the fact-based and philosophical? Forgive the, said, that's what they said. That's in short what they said. I'm still confused.
I don't know if I followed that at all.
I'm more confused than you are. This one from, well, I'll ask him. Kobe, clarify in chat if you want. Lewis, though, asked for Dan, with Mike Jones preparing with a bunch of studies that he talked about in his argument not changing for 11 months. Uh, why didn't you bring studies of your own?
Well, I didn't know what kind of debate this would be. I thought we were just going to have a nice casual conversation. I'm impressed with did, but
Thank you.
actually he did all of his preparation months ago, and so so that's why I'm showing up just to talk. And I bet you most of the viewers and listeners are not going to touch 2% of the books you mentioned, Mike. You impressed everybody with your scholarship, but how many of them are actually going to pick up those books, and how many of them are going to remember most of those?
I disagree. I teach my followers every day, read what I cite. Read what I cite. You want the studies, I'll send it to you. If I have a PDF, I'll send you the book. I have a lot of followers who do read a lot of the books I cite.
Well, maybe some of them do. Okay, but
This
well, then I would encourage them also to read the Bible.
Yep.
this
Yep.
one from Do Appreciate It. Uh, Colby McQueen says, ask Dan if he can justify infanticide as bad. They tend to obfuscate, they say atheists tend to obfuscate and what morality is in the modern. So basically, they just said, Dan, can you justify why infanticide is bad on your position?
Well, I think I think the questioner would agree with me that it is bad, but he's asking for a justification of it. And I would just go back to harm. It harms a biological human being. It's causing harm to kill someone. And by definition, if morality is the avoidance or the minimizing of harm to any of us, then that's what makes it bad. And when God did it, God did something bad.
You got it. Nora Belrose says, Dan, are you trying to take credit for every good thing humans have ever done by calling it, quote, humanist? What
Yeah.
doesn't count as humanist?
Well, anything that disrespects human values is not humanist. So authoritarianism, fascism, many of the actions of the God of the Bible are not humanistic. They are very, they're bullying basically. And you look at the covenant in Deuteronomy, where I mentioned that there were blessings and curses. It was kind of like a marriage vow between God and his people. What if wedding vows said, I promise to love you, and if you love me, I will take care of you. But if you even look sideways at another man, I'm going to poke your eyes out and pull your hair out and spread dog poop on your face. And I'm not making this up. This stuff's in the Bible. What if vows were like that? Blessings and curses. That bride should run away from that marriage. And that's what we find in the Bible. We find curses and threats, and not just curses and threats, but they are actually carried out. Innocent people. There was a tribal people in the Bible who were innocent, who were doing nothing wrong, who were exterminated and destroyed because one of the tribes of Israel needed a place to live. And the Bible even says they were a kind, gentle, innocent people who were murdered and killed in the name of God. That is morally reprehensible. And anyone who pretends to worship a God like that, who would even defend such a creature, has no concept of what morality is.
What's the tribe?
The Danites.
And the Danites were Israelites.
I know. They were a tribe of Israel.
Who'd they wipe out then?
There was a city called Lachish or Lashish.
Oh, from the book of Judges, the one where it ends by saying in those days there was no king, so everyone did what they thought. So basically it's pointing out that they were acting on their own and doing what they thought was good, not following the law of God. That's the point of the book of Judges. The point of the book of Judges is that it got so bad that even the judges, like, for example, Samson and Jephthah, were doing all sorts of evil things. That's the point of Judges. You read the Judges, they get progressively worse until by the end there's no judge and everyone's running around doing whatever they want, like the Danites doing that to Lachish.
Jephthah did not do an evil thing according to the Bible.
Where does it say that?
Because he was rewarded with a judgeship after he burned his daughter.
No, it does not say that at all.
Yes,
no,
read the Bible. You need to read your Bible, Mike.
You need to actually read it as well. And you also should read what scholars have to say about this. Read Robert Alter, John Walton, for example, all sorts of great scholars.
I want to give Dan
Jephthah burned his daughter as a sacrifice to God and was rewarded with a judgeship, and he was buried with honors back within the family in the village that he came from. He was a horrible man, and God honored him.
He was a horrible man.
Yes.
I did not honor him.
We got to move forward just because you have so many questions. This one from Lefty Dawa says, Dan, are you sure you read the Bible or taking Dawa points? I think they're saying, like, are you using critiques that the Islam apologetics commonly uses? They say, have you studied the cultural context?
Well, yes, but none of us have studied everything, of course. I mean, there's just too much, and there are so many different authors at so many different times and different languages as well. But assuming, you don't have to assume this, but if you do assume that the Bible is God's word to the human race, and Christians are always telling us, read the Bible. We were just down there at the Scopes Trial Courthouse, and it has the big sign there, read your Bible, as if the Bible was this great source of moral teachings. If that is God's word to the human race, it's God's word to me. I am intended to pick it up and read it and interpret it and understand it as I see it. And if it needs scholars and experts in order to explain to us what it really means, then God was inept at communicating his message to me. When you open a Bible in a hotel room and there's a Gideon Bible, there's no scholars there. Oh, by the way, Greek? You need to interpret it this way.
Do you read Greek and Hebrew? Can you read Greek and Hebrew?
I can read the Greek. Yeah, I can read the
Oh,
Greek.
but you can't read the Hebrew, so you need scholars to tell you what the Hebrew says, right?
Well, assuming that they you're right. There are so many different
Yeah.
translations, and they disagree with each other. A lot of
Okay.
them disagree, right? You
We
find
might
different
as we might need to
translators.
go. This I have to go to the next one just because I hate to go off topic, but Than says for Dan, can you provide any studies to suggest secular humanism is good for society? We haven't seen any.
Well, I referred to Phil Zuckerman, whose work I do admire, and I know, Mike, you think you really struck him out, but
Mhm.
his work is highly respected among sociologists,
Yep.
and the statistics that he gives is highly respected among
Yep.
sociologists. And I know you want to pick at it, but they're, and he's actually a good friend of mine. He and I both did a debate together at Oxford a couple of years ago. Really a wonderful, friendly guy. But yeah, he does cite a lot of the studies as well. And I could have gone to the library, to our library, and brought a bunch if I thought this was the kind of debate it was going to be. But so I apologize for that.
This one from Mother Hulda says, Dan, it seems part of your stance rests on an anachronistic view of humanism, though. Ancient people in no way were behaving from modern humanist values. Christian values informed humanists, not vice versa. Don't you agree?
No, I don't agree. I think humanist values inform Christianity because if you look at Christianity, what it is, the Bible, the teachings of the book, modern Christians have vastly improved over those primitive, brutal teachings. And so maybe the word humanism wasn't there, but the underlying values that we're all referring to here are humanistic values.
You got it? This one from JSS Tiger says, Dear Mike, did Christian societies condone slavery? Yes. Well, they answered for you.
Yeah, and if you look at the development through Europe, you actually see them start to eradicate it slowly. Tom Holland makes this point. He says Christianity was like a depth charge. It took time for people to figure out what these values mean, how to implement them, how for they. And so you're going to expect that to be a slow progress. Also, point out that if you read, for example, scholars like Rodney Stark, they note that like a lot of societies became Christian because like the elites converted, but it took time for the populace to actually convert. I remember reading Clifford Bachman in the book Worlds of Medieval Europe. He notes that like a French peasant would have been lucky if he saw a priest once a year. Like it wasn't this idea that everyone just converted en masse in the medieval ages was 100% Christian. A lot of times churches were empty. This was more of a cultural change that took time. At the founding of America, only 17% of people belonged to a church. And then you go through the Second Great Awakening, that goes up to like 37%, and then you get the abolitionist movement out of that Second Great Awakening. So it took time for Christianity to saturate the culture and change things. But even with that, we see Europe slowly starts to get rid of slavery, and that's why they had to go. They had the transatlantic slave trade because they had basically freed all the slaves in Europe, and they had come to the conclusion Christians could not own other Christians as slaves. I document all this in my video, how Christianity ended slavery.
And you probably also document that it wasn't just your idea of Christianity, but there were other economic reasons why slavery was no longer viable. So it probably would have happened anyway.
No, it was crucial. Christianity was the spark. And then they leaned on economic and political stuff as well. But Robert Fogel will note the spark that actually started all was Christianity.
This one from Aiming Upwards says, Dan, since you're morally imperfect like me and lacking in that area, approximately how certain must you be that the core gospel is true and it holds the cure to your condition for you to actively put your trust in Jesus?
Boy, I don't know what kind of question that is. How certain am I that what?
I think they're saying like if we as humans are morally imperfect, then how certain can we be that the core of the gospel is true and it holds the cure to our condition for you to actively trust in Jesus?
Yeah, so that could cut both ways, couldn't it? That question could go both ways. Yeah, none of us are perfect, and so um, what a moral principle does is it gets you outside of yourself. You're following a principle, and there are people who acknowledge principles, but they don't follow them. There are people who, like there are pedophiles. I've just read a book about these priests and ministers who are sexually abusing children, and it's really epidemic. And it's not just Catholics. In fact, there's more Protestant ministers who abuse children than Catholic priests. And many of them admit that they know what they're doing is wrong. And so they admit there's a principle there that this should not happen. But there's something, pedophilia is a disease in most cases that has no cure. They've tried to cure it, and the only real cure for it is to just keep them away from children. So, yeah, I'm not certain about everything. No, who's certain about everything? But I do know that if we have a principle that, I mean, do we even have to say this? Harm is bad, right? Do I have to say that? We want to avoid harm. And so acting in ways that minimize harm, maybe we could even call that a virtue if you want to use that word. It is a good moral principle. I think it's the only basic universal moral principle that we all share, not because we want to avoid hell or go to heaven or please the God, or we're doing it for some extrinsic reason, but because intrinsically we recoil from harm and we want to have the world with less harm, less violence, and more understanding. And maybe none of us are perfect in that regard, but at least we have some principles we can follow.
You got it. This one from Louis Ciavarella says, for Dan, with Mike Jones preparing with a bunch of studies. Oh, we got that one. The Great Grilled Cheese says, Dan, why do you assume Christians are ignoring the Bible and not giving credit to the New Testament teachings, like love your enemy and that we're all equal in Christ?
Well, many of them do, and I think there are some good teachings in the Bible, and it's not all bad. Test all things and hold fast to that which is good. I think that's a good teaching. We do have to remember the context, though, of love your neighbors and that the Old Testament verse that was being quoted at that point was the neighbors only were your Hebrew neighbors. They didn't express much love to their neighboring tribes, but for the cohesiveness of their own. And they brought in slaves from the neighboring tribes. But well, it's getting late. My brain is fuzzing out here. But
No problem. We're gonna thank you very much. Folks, no more questions. We've got a number that we're gonna try to read through fast here. So just for sure, I want to be clear. We
real quick,
can't take
James,
any
for
more
anyone
notes.
interested, I'm going to just go live on my channel after this if anyone wants to join us.
You got it. Marilyn said, Dan, you're fabulous. The kingdom of God is within you, and your humility is a beautiful example of being Christ-like. You don't boast, but deserve all the praise. I see and hear you, King. I think you have a fan. This one from says, Mike and Dan, would you rather live in a Christian or Islamic society?
Christian.
Oh, was I asked that question too?
Yep.
Well, it depends. There are some wonderful Islamic societies, and there are some horrible Christian societies. So I guess it depends which one. There's different Islamic structures and political systems in different countries. We owe a lot to Islam, although Islam has been, an extreme faction of Islam has been horribly violent, and we need to denounce that. But I think there are many non-believers in the world who are not too unhappy living in certain Islamic countries. Not all of them. Some of them are really repressive. And in fact, we have a good friend named Betty Ipsitami who wore a T-shirt that said, Allah is a lesbian. She just wore a T-shirt that said that. She's serving 30 months in jail. So that's horrible. I mean, that in that case, I would rather live in a country, Christian or otherwise, or like Japan or maybe in the Nordic countries, that at least outlaws blasphemy.
You got it. This one coming in from, let's see. Basil Problem says, Mike, what do you believe the age of the Earth is?
4.6 billion years old.
This one from Nazir says, how Dan answers every question. I just can't quite. Let's say this. Mike says, do you like apples? And they say, Dan responds, humanists invented apples. The Bible hated apples.
That's mean.
Let's see. But Dan, my guess
That's
is you think
that's a good characterization, a good cartoon characterization of the debate.
See, some of these are a little simple, but Stitz 4 says if Christians do selfless things and say it's on behalf of Christianity, how are they not doing it because they are Christian? How is that falsifiable?
I don't understand the
I
question.
think most Christians are good people, and most of them are doing it, saying that they're doing it because of their Christianity. I think it. But underlying all of that, the goodness of those principles are humanistic values.
You got it. We're near the end. Than says, as a Greek, Dan is wrong about us. We are not that great. That's just a joke from that earlier.
Hmm.
Someone thought you were a Greek supremacist. Wayward Frequency says, I'd love to see IP Mike Jones debate Andrew Wilson or made by Jim Bob on what Christian
No,
nationalism
because
is.
Andrew Wilson's view of Christian nationalism is not the Christian nationalism I'm against. It's more like Christian populism. When I heard him debate Gnostic informant, I was like, yeah, this is nothing I'm against. It's just Christian populism. It's not like the authoritarian government has to enforce Christianity. So I wasn't against anything. So would it be a really boring debate, honestly?
Christian Theologetics says, what would convince Dan that Mike is right on this issue tonight, the debate topic?
What would convince me?
Yep.
I guess what would convince me is for Mike to draw a line and connect some dots between Christianity and the thoughts and deeds of Christians.
You got it. Even Lord said, but more people died in the French Revolution, a secular humanist government, than the series of inquisitions under the Catholic Church. Dan, don't you agree?
Well, that may be true, but it's not necessarily true that the French Revolution was humanistic.
You got it. We're actually pretty close to the end here. Let's
We're
see.
gonna wrap up.
Uh, just let me skim if in case I missed any last ones. They say humanists are consequentialists, so um, enslaving women for the sake of world peace would be okay. I think.
Well,
Go ahead.
um, you can't say that all humanists are consequentialists. What I'm saying is that I am a humanist and an atheist with a naturalistic moral philosophy that is consequentialist, the harm principle. Other humanists and other atheists might formulate it different. In fact, some would disagree with me, and we welcome the disagreement, by the way. But you would have to show me that that there was any good in doing that for the species and for those individuals. Obviously, we all understand that sometimes to minimize harm, you have to create some harm. You might have to cut off a limb in order to save a life. Nobody wants their leg cut off. That's horrible. But you might have to do something like that occasionally for overall greater good. That doesn't mean cutting off a leg is a good thing. It's actually a bad thing. But sometimes you have to do bad things, especially in self-defense. In self-defense, you might have to do something that on its face is bad, but it's, you're protecting the lives of your children or whatever. Then I don't think any humanist would say it's all just rosy goody-goodies. It's a weighing of values and comparing the relative merits of the consequences of different actions in the big picture. And there's no simple answer to some of those questions. Sometimes there is no answer to some of those questions.
You got it. And that's actually that's all of our questions. So I want to say, folks, check out our guest links, even if you disagree with them. I want to encourage you in the chat, everybody who's watching, there's a value from, even if you disagree, check out Mike or Dan's links because you're at least getting their positions straight from them. You're not getting it from someone else who says, like, well, they say this and they're summarizing it, and it might not be a fully strengthened, filled out summary. So I do want to say thank you very much for our guests. They're the lifeblood of the show, and they've made an amazing debate tonight. People really enjoyed this. I want to say thank you, Mike and Dan. It's been a true pleasure to have you guys here tonight.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, really happy to meet the legend Dan Barker. Appreciate it.
Do I have 30 seconds to mention a book?
Yes, please do.
There's a Christian book coming out called by Eerdman's Publishing called Debating God's Existence, a friendly debate between believers and skeptics. It's based on a debate I did, and they have enlisted 6 theistic scholars and 6 atheistic scholars to comment on our debate. And since it's published by a Christian publisher, they consider it to be well balanced. And it's going to come out sometime early in the spring, Debating God's Existence, and you'll get to you'll get some leading atheist and leading theistic scholars involved in it, commenting on how well each of us did in our debate. I've debated Dr. Adam Lloyd Johnson there. So look for that book.
That's really cool. That does sound like a great book. Folks, check out Dan's link. My guess is you might be able to get, would they maybe be able to get updates at your link, uh, Dan, from Freedom from Religion.
Yeah,
Folks,
ffrf.org.
you bet. That's linked in the description box below, as well as Mike Jones's YouTube channel. I'm going to let our guys go as they've been here late. I want to say once again, thank you guys. And folks in the chat, stick around. We'll be back in just a moment to talk about upcoming debates. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah. I'm not dying. Get out of here. We're dancing in the street. There's nothing left to eat. We're on our winning streak.
Amazing. Want to say thanks so much for being with us. Thank you so much. We'll put a poll in the chat. I know folks are saying, hey, what about a poll? I will put that in there right now. I want to say thank you guys for your support, though, in terms of hitting like. Please do. It does help more people see this debate. If you thought, hey, I felt like my side was really well represented in this debate, a great way of people seeing it more is if you like it, it tells the algorithm like, hey, okay, recommend this to more people. And so thank you guys for hitting like. That's only if you thought your side was more persuasive. If you thought your side was not more persuasive, then probably wouldn't be a good idea to hit like, because then more people would see it. But I want to put this. I'm going to put the actual title of the question: is Christianity or secular humanism best for society? Is Christianity and then secular humanism. I'm putting that as the option, and then you can vote right now. And Basil, I know you asked, like, why did I not read all your questions? For one, is Basil, like, I'm not going to read something where you're slandering me. So you're like, I thought this was a free speech channel. It's like, okay, well, but you're slandering. You said this is a Christian nationalist channel. I gotta be honest, I don't know what Christian nationalism means. I don't know how to define it. So the other thing is, it's true, we host people that are openly Christian nationalists, like Andrew Wilson or Doug Wilson, I think, is openly Christian nationalist. But we also host atheists. So if you're like, well, if you host a Christian nationalist, this means then it is a Christian nationalist channel, as you said. It's like, well, then we're also an atheist channel because we've hosted atheists. It just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like, I got to be honest, no offense, I think you're drinking. I don't mean to embarrass you because I know this sounds really bad, but there's something going on over there. I don't know what you're on, but you're just kind of acting strange tonight. But thanks for being a member. Apparently, you got one of the gifted memberships. So, hey, you're welcome. But thank you for being a member. Everybody who is a member, Walk with the Spirit, thanks for being a member. Marilyn, thanks for being a member. Basil Problem, thanks for being a member, even if you're one who says that you slander me. But thank you. Action Packed, I see you there in the live chat. Now I've got to tell you guys about all this fun stuff coming up because you guys are like, hey, well, what is it that's all coming up? I will show you. And what I'm going to do is show you the webpage for DebateCon. So this is our in-person debate conference. If you didn't know that this is happening in Nashville, baby, it's going to be big. So I want to show you right now because you're like, well, it's an in-person debate conference. This is new for me. What is that exactly? Casual Crypt, thanks for becoming a member at the spectator level. Appreciate that support. But yeah, for real, thank you guys for your support as members. Frank V, thanks for being with us on paper. Good to see you there in the chat. Bluey, thanks for coming by. Demodric Williams, glad that you are here. And let's see, Basil Problem says, are you embarrassed to say you're a doctor? No, I mean, it doesn't bother me. Really, we try to synthesize it with the brand, where it says like Dr. James all over, just because it gives a little more credibility to the channel. I don't care that people call me doctor. And the funny thing is, when you get called doctor, I feel like I get more people who, when they learn that I have my doctorate, they try to insult me for it rather than calling me doctor. And that's okay, because I never insisted they call me doctor. But it's often, whenever you do something stupid, they go, "Oh, you got a doctorate?" Oh. It's like, I hear that all the time. That's like, it's not original. The funny thing is, I think they think they're original. I think it's something like weird, some sort of weird bitterness about those people. But you know what? You can't let them get you down. I'm excited about the future, and I'm happy and just grateful for you guys. Let's see. Dry Tit says, can't bash the guests. Too bad. Oh, we actually do allow a lot. We let people say an awful lot, but we do, like, within reason. Like, sometimes people are just mean, and it's so now you're somebody complaining that they can't insult the guests enough. Is that you're kind of like, guys, come on, we want to let you say what you want to a degree, but sometimes people, you can do it a little bit too much. But 99% of you are super positive, and I want to say thank you for that. Action Packed, Jack, Bluey, Moonlight Cat's Bible, Tippy River, Casual Crypt. You're also positive, and I appreciate that so much. Now, let me show you this. I'm going to show you the little screen share here. Is you might be thinking, James, what exactly is... I'm going to do a little window capture of Zoom. DebateCon 6, it's in Nashville. It's a 2-day conference filled with debates, and it's going to be huge. So let me show you what I mean by that, because you may be thinking, like, James, is it really going to be huge? Well, let me hit you with some knowledge. Got the Zoom meeting. There it is. Thanks for your patience. Here's why I say it's going to be huge. It has guests inspiring philosophy, apostate prophet, Andrew Wilson, made by Jim Bob, Rachel Wilson, Jake of Rattlesnake TV. I want to show you this right over here. So you can see it. You can click this button, Get Tickets, where I'm waving the cursor. Or, if you scroll down, it'll say when and where, Saturday, November 15th, Sunday, November 16th. So that's coming quick. I mean, that's about a month. That's 35 days away, you guys. They're like, it will sneak up on you. Grab your tickets now. They're linked in the description box. Now, 10 a.m., as you can see on screen, let me double check that you actually can see on screen. Yeah, it's showing. Okay. Is VIP attendee backroom outnumber debate, inspiring philosophy versus 5 skeptic challengers. Then we're going to have Jake of Rattlesnake TV versus Planet Peterson. Christianity or secular humanism, which is best for society? Whew. It's going to be juicy. It's going to be controversial. Rachel Wilson at 3 p.m. versus Craig on whether or not feminism is more good or bad for society. Andrew Wilson versus Daniel Hakikachu, Christianity or Islam, which is best for society. And, there's more. That's just the first day. It's going to be a massive behemoth conference. So, on Sunday, you can see it says made by Jim Bob versus Planet Peterson. Does naturalism explain better than theism? It's going to be huge. That's another one I'm really excited about. And Fady, Ibrahim, thanks for being a member. And yeah, they say, Basil problem, all you spout is baseless accusations. Why are you so salty? Yeah, Basil, like, you just seem like you're so angry. They say the 99% are chubby Christian nationalists. You think there are losers at Gold's. Now he's attacking their physique. What is going on? Yeah, it's like, you're just stop. You're making yourself look worse. Like, don't. There's an old Chinese proverb. Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Let's just let him say what he wants. I think he's just trolling us. He's not being real, because he's making his side look so silly that is like, he can't be for real. He's got to be trolling to, like, make fun of his own side. But yeah, I wouldn't. Thank you for your kind words. The Great Grilled Cheese, appreciate that. High Speed Drifter, thanks for your kind words. I never, like, if you really wanted to get a PhD, like, cool, but I wouldn't recommend it. Like, it's not like you It's not like you need to get a PhD to be smart. Like, that's for sure. You can be smart with a PhD. Everybody knows that. That's obvious. Because sometimes I see people in chat who are like, you can be smart without one. And likewise, there are some people with a PhD that you can certainly see flaws in a lot of their thinking and reasoning. And frankly, I'm not going to tell you which fields, but when you do IQ tests on different fields, people with a PhD in economics have a much higher IQ average than certain other fields, as just an example. But I don't want to pick on the fields that have lower IQs for their doctorates. But yeah, I want to say thank you for your kind words and support. So yeah, in other words, Master Optics, good to see you there. I see you there in the old live chat. Glad that you were here. Tippy River says winter is coming. It's time to put on some insulation. That's so true. We should become chubby, very chubby, because that will bother basal problem if we become chubby and insulate ourselves from the cold. And Moonlight Cat's Bible says funniest debate on this channel. Now, going back to DebateCon 6, what I'm going to put is if you're thinking about it and you're like, well, I'm thinking about it, you know, it's in Nashville, there is a way that you can get a discount. So we do have, it's a $25, we're going to have a flash sale where it'll be $25 off. And I'm going to put that link. If you sign up for our insiders list, I just put the link in the live chat. I'm pinning it to the top. If you sign up, you can get like a heads up on when the flash sale will be, and you'll get the discount code so you can use it and get your discount, get $25 off, and you take that $25, spend it on something else. You can either go invest it or you can buy yourself some Chick-fil-A, whatever you want. But I want to say thank you guys for hitting like. We're up to 484, which is fantastic. 485 is if we can just get 15 more. We're just 15 away. I know that Frank V in the live chat said he would email everyone in chat feet pics. So if you want some feet pics, just 15 more likes away. Now, let's go back to this. Yeah. Check out that pinned chat. That has our insiders list. Get on that list. We'll give you updates on like, hey, here's when there's going to be a flash sale. All that cool stuff. So that's one thing. And if you didn't know, we have channel memberships. Check them out. At least peek over and see, because you might find something you like. Here's an example. Let's say you're like, well, I'm considering it. What are the cool things? Well, at the spectator level, there's just $2.99 a month. So basically a cup of, like, probably cheaper than a cup of coffee now. Like, it just, the way that they're devaluing the dollar, that the way that, you know, the way things are playing out, the dollar is becoming weaker. So, I mean, now it's not even $2.99 compared to like 5 years ago. I mean, it's like, this is pocket change, it's like pennies. Is you get the loyalty badges next to your name. You get the custom emoji to use in comments and in live chat. So we never use those enough. I should. I'm going to put those in the live chat. Here are some examples. I'm putting them in. So there's amazing. And then there's juicy. If you want to see some juicy debates, we have got a lot of them coming up. There are these ones with my face. I don't know why you'd want to use those. Frightening. This is... it's back when I used to I used to use those blue light blockers. Because when I lived in a time zone, whenever I'd stream in Central Time, it was like later. Because right now it's 8:42 p.m. But in Wisconsin, it's 10:42 p.m. So I'd want to block that light out. And let's see. My basal problem is so triggered. Isa Kabir, thank you for becoming a member at the spectator level. See, Easter recognizes that if you know, $2.99, it's just worth pennies now. It's just become so devalued. Consider buying gold or a channel membership because the dollar is just not worth much. Now, Master Optics says, hi, James. Nice to see you too. Thank you very much, brother. Glad that you are back. We are 12 likes away from those feet pics. Don't forget. And thank you for being with us. Christ Bear Guru Pastor, happy to have you. Jeremy Crawford, happy that you were with us. And Alex Ojedugu,
Thank you for coming by. Andrew Nazario, happy to have you with us. And Jeremy Crawford, glad that you're with us. Now, I'm going to go back to the channel memberships. I want to tell you about these. If you click the join button, I don't know if you ever have. You're maybe like, I don't know, what is it there? I'll show you. So basically, you get those cool perks. You get access to members-only polls, photos and status updates, and immunity from from chat slow mode. So if we ever do flip on slow mode, which once in a while we do, I don't like using it, to be honest. But we do it once in a while. If things get really fast and the moderators are like, James, it's just, please, you have to. This is killing me. Now, you can go up a level. The middle level, $4.99 a month, is you get members-only videos, members-only shout-outs, which reminds me, I'm going to do those shout-outs right now. Channel members at the debater level, Tony's Tech and Custom PCs, Pedo, Michael Dresden, and Alyssa, thank you for becoming members at the debater level. Appreciate that. So at the debater level is like the middle level. You get your name shouted out at the end of a debate. Patreon members at the MDD VIP tier also get their name shouted out. Oliver Catwell and Andrew Barry, thank you for your support. Also, you get early access to new videos. So DebateCon, we will actually, like in truth, if you sign up at the highest tier, the final word, that level of membership, that's how you can watch all of the DebateCon debates live from at home. Because I know some people, they're like, I just can't travel out to Nashville for what would be three nights or so. They're like, I can't do that. You actually, if you remember, it's only at the final word. It's the highest level. So it's $14.99 is that you'd actually be able to watch those. But I'm not supposed to announce that for another 5 days. So now, the debater level is epic because you get members-only live streams. In particular, our Patreon meeting is going to be streamed, so you can watch that. Early access to new videos. So that would be like our outnumbered ones. Those have been released early for members at the debater level. And then the final word. So if you're like, hey, I'm a huge fan, your name would be on screen in the little ticker at the bottom of the debate. And you can share your thoughts at the MDD monthly Zoom meeting. But yeah, thank you guys for all of your support. Jupiter Darman says, you're ever going to do a debate con in the Kansas City area? Possibly. I got to be honest, it's not in the near future. Probably the next one we're going to be doing, it's not really debate con. It's going to be more like Ratio Christi con. But Modern Day Debate is helping collaborate to put it on. That is going to be in San Antonio, Lord willing, in January. Not for sure yet, but probable. Then, probably in Chicago, probably like late April, maybe early April, we plan on hosting DebateCon 7. That will feature, that'll be in Chicago, Lord willing. That's the plan. And then, once it gets cold again, so like probably a year from now or so, we probably will go down to Orlando. So lots of, because we were like, hey, we're going to go to Dallas again. I do want to go back. That'd be fun. Basil Problem says, did you ever meet Jared? No, I did not meet your friend Jared. You're obsessed with him. But yeah. Demadric, thank you for coming by. I'm going to show you guys more. 2 seconds. So, if you are looking on screen, you can see the main event for the whole conference will be Andrew Wilson versus Dr. Richard Carrier, Christianity or Secular Humanism, which is best for society. Apostate Prophet will be taking on Javad Hashmi. That is going to be a super juicy debate. And then, if you're like, hey, James, like, what else is going on? Promoting. So you might be thinking, James, okay, cool. Good for, good for the conference. That sounds fun. But what about, let me just see if I've got this right. I'm going to delete this. Thanks for your patience. Audio, I got that. That's just got to stay. Camera, I got to delete that. And then you're thinking, James, what else is to see? Oh, wow. Okay. Let me just fix this. I'm going to move. Here I go. Now I'm in the middle of the screen showing you the perks for our Indiegogo crowdfund. If you look at the top left, you can give without a perk to the crowdfund. So this is at Indiegogo. I'm going to put that link in the live chat. So if you're like, hey, I can't go to DebateCon, but I want to get in on some of the action, is that you can check out new channel membership, including, let me get this. Oh, wait. If you, last but not least, let's say you have do you guys have Amazon Prime? Let me know in chat if you do. Because if you happen to have Amazon Prime, if you support Modern Day Debate, you can, if you want to support Modern Day Debate, I should say, if you go to our Twitch, which I've put in the live chat, I just pinned it. I'm going to pin it as a comment. You can support Modern Day Debate by using your free sub. So if you have Amazon Prime, you get a free sub on Twitch every month, a free subscription. That's what I mean by sub. And you can use it toward Modern Day Debate, which I just linked at, it's like the pinned chat, is that helps Modern Day Debate. I think we get like $2 every time a person uses their Amazon Prime sub toward Modern Day Debate. We do appreciate that. That's another way of supporting us, and we do appreciate it. 492 likes. We're only 8 likes away from the big 500. So that's really cool. But yeah, check it out. The chat that is pinned at the top of the chat right now. Use your Amazon Prime subscription on Twitch to support Modern Day Debate's Twitch channel. So we do appreciate that. It means more than you know. Now, also, though, as you can see on screen, the Indiegogo crowdfund, I'm going to put this, which I have not apparently put in. You can get a signed photo of your favorite speaker and other cool perks. Check that out. Okay. Now, that I'm going to pin in the top of the chat as well. So I'm pinning that. And I'm getting a little tired myself. So that link that I just pinned at the top of the live chat, I'm going to show you the perks that come from that crowdfund. As you can see at the top left of the screen, what you're looking at now, you can give without a perk. You're like, hey, here's $5. Just like what you guys do, want you to keep doing it. We want to encourage you to do that. Thank you for your support. It means more than you know. Otherwise, you're like, hey, well, I actually, I want my name in the post-debate credits as like a mini sponsor. I'm willing to throw $20 in. We do appreciate that more than you know. Please consider supporting at that level. And then maybe it's like, hey, I really want a signed emblem page that says DebateCon 6, as you can see at the top right of the screen, with all the autographs of all the debaters. That's another perk you get. Or maybe you're like, hey, I really want a signed photo of my favorite debater. As you can see in the bottom left of the screen, that's another cool perk you can get. As that example shows. Andrew wishes his handwriting was that good. It's not really that good. I've seen it. That's just a little mock-up. And then at the bottom right of the screen, one-on-one Zoom chat with Dr. James. And then Basil Problem says, how much funding have you received from Tenant Media? Oh my gosh, this guy is on drugs. He's got to be trolling, because I've never received a dime from any Tenant Media or anything even like it. Let's see. You guys are funny. I don't know about you. Dutch Judge, I see you there in the chat. Thanks for coming by. Let's see. Yeah. We're so close to 500 likes. 495. Come on, gang. We can do it. There's got to be 5 people out there that are like, oh, yeah. Did I hit like yet? I don't know. I would be so grateful. Now I want to show you, last but not least, one of the coolest emojis from our channel memberships is Soy Boy. As you can see in the chat, I just put that right there so that you can call people a soy boy too. All you have to do is become a member. Marilyn's doing it. Thanks, Marilyn. Appreciate you showing that off. And thanks, Mill9999 says, James, I'm late. I'm sorry. I love you, buddy. Keep up the good work. Thank you for your kind words. Glad to see you here. We're at 496 likes. That must have come from Mill99999. Thank you for that. And Taylor D, good to see you there. And but yeah, thank you guys for your support. Yes, basal problem. You got well. The thing is, like, you're just so all this stuff is so outlandish. Like, yes, the Russian government was funding modern day debate because they're like, oh yes, we wanna like influence like America through a neutral debate channel. Because like if it's neutral, that'll show favoritism toward us. Like, how would it be favoring one side if it's neutral? Thank you, Jupiter Dharma says there's my obligatory like. Thank you for that. We're at 499. So can you please, if you're out there listening, can you be the last person to hit like and get us over that hurdle? But basically, yeah, we never even host debates on Russia though. So I'm confused by that. But yes, Samuel 33 says aliens. Hey, we might do a debate on whether or not alien abductions are legit in the next month. It's like a big maybe. Crash TV, thank you for coming by. Says, so you don't deny it. That's funny. You guys are characters. Says Mill says we must protect this channel at all costs. Thank you for your kind words. We are a neutral channel. It's important to us that we really do. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, we want to call it like right down the middle. Want to give everybody equal time, all that stuff. But I want to say thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your support. 501 likes, the 501st like. What movie reference is that? The 501st. But yeah, I want to say thank you for your support. We will see you at the next debate. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Oh, you know what I'm going to show you? Members only. Let me copy this. Share screen. It'll do this. Paste reference. Yeah. Now, last but not least, you can see, check out our new members only playlist, including our most juicy debates and over 350 debates in total. So this is if you support at the debater level, membership level. You get all these juicy debates. Andrew Wilson versus Alex Stein and many other juicy debates. Milo Yiannopoulos and many others. Nick Fuentes, Stefan Molyneux, just all sorts of juicy stuff. But yeah. So yeah, consider becoming a member. Thanks for all your support. I love you guys. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Did I get everything? I think like there's so many different things. Thank you guys for all your love. I'll see you at the next one. Take care, folks. Appreciate you. I hope you're all well. No matter how hard of a day you had, if you had a hard day, I hope you know I do appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out here. Seriously, hang in there. Things will get better. If things are hard right now, I've been through really hard times myself. They will get better. Sometimes it takes a long time. It takes, but keep your hope that things will get better and that you'll learn things from these hard times, even if it is just perseverance, which is way more valuable than we ever talk about, by the way. So yeah, thank you guys for your support. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. We'll see you at the next debate.